It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy's here. Alex is here. Mr. Snell is here. None of them has a Vision Pro yet. They're all going to get theirs, or some of them will get theirs on Friday. But the embargo has been lifted, and reviews are pouring in from iJustine, Marquez Brownlee, Nilay Patel, Joanna Stern, and more. We'll talk about the reviews, the pros and the cons, what we've learned today about the Vision Pro, and what we think it holds for the future. That's coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 906, recorded Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. Dim and weird. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by ZocDoc. Yeah, we all know there are things in life you got to compromise on. Apartments in your budget, the upstairs neighbor who turns out to be a drummer, and so on. But when it comes to your health, there's no compromise. Instead, check out ZocDoc, where you could find and book doctors who will make you feel comfortable, listen to you, and prioritize your health. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. And you can search by location, availability, even insurance. So literally no compromises here, because with ZocDoc, you've got more options than you know. And these docs all have verified reviews from actual, real patients. The typical wait time to see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is between just 24 and 72 hours. That's it. You can even score same-day appointments. So go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. Download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. It's time for Vision Break Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from the Vision Pro. The reviews are out, but fortunately we have some pros here to talk about it. Jason Snell, 6 colors. Did you get your Vision Pro? No.
If I did, I'd be wearing it now, but I am not.
The embargo was...
I actually spent half an hour with it last Friday, but
good.
They didn't let me walk away with it, so we'll see.
There's our new album art, and I think it looks good. I really do.
It's great.
Andy Anatko, where's your spooky eyes?
Well, I mean, I'm
in his head.
Built right in, and actually looks quite good.
Sorry.
It's very realistic.
Well, I mean, this is an avatar, so I mean, I'm sorry that I get the uncanny valley effect for everybody. But, this is new technology, human faces, and
the eyebrows are a little off, I have to say. But other than that,
humans cry.
I used a new guy this morning. Unfortunately, Celeste was unavailable.
And also Andy WGBH Boston, and also from OzFuzHours.global, we welcome the return of Alex Lindsay. We took every opportunity while you were gone to slam Apple's App Store policies in the EU. So you don't have to defend it. It's okay. We just did all the one-sided arguing without you.
Outstanding.
So Tuesday morning, I guess, because I got an onslaught of news stories, the Vision Pro embargo has been lifted. Did you It was the usual suspects. I'm sorry, Jason, that you are no longer in the usual suspects. But as somebody who's been pressing his nose against the glass for more than 10 years, welcome.
Yeah, I'm a second wave reviewer for almost everything except the Mac, so it's not unexpected, and it's fine. I will say this before we break down what anybody has writing so far. I actually really admire Marcus Brownlee for posting an unboxing as his first video.
Why is that? You're being facetious?
No, I am, because some of these things, like I think Nilay Patel's review from The Verge is excellent. His written review. I haven't watched his video yet. It's so good for a product that he's used for 5 days or 6 days. But I will say this. This is it's a brand new computer platform, 1.0 from Apple. I'm not sure 6 days is enough, honestly. So there'll be much more. There are plenty of stories to tell for everybody who's going to get it this week, which is everybody who bought it, because Friday's the day.
Yeah.
Well, I agree mostly with that. I think that there's going to be 2 waves of reviews. I think that the reviews that come after the first week are legitimate and very, very useful, because this is what people are going to be experiencing with this. And this is, in a way, the fact that you're dealing with a product that you've never really used before. I mean, even if you have a Meta Quest helmet, Quest set, it's not as though you've been using it as ambitiously as this. You do have to get used to it. On the other hand, this is going to be before you talk yourself into saying, oh, well, yes, I know it's way too heavy. And yes, I know the text isn't really easy, but I'm getting used to it. And you're not supposed to get used to it. Ask anybody who's had a butterfly keyboard. But I think the second wave is going to, in 6 months, when it's not just the people who've been using it for a long time, but also in the presence of a very rich app ecosystem where they've been able to figure out, here's some people who've created the kind of apps that justify the expense and justify the new technology. That's going to be the second wave. And that's going to be probably the most useful wave.
Well, first impressions are important, but I do think that there is a challenge to get impressions that are initial, that are surface deep. Like when I spent my 30 minutes with it last Friday, I spent the first 10 or 15 minutes having sensory overload. And then I spent the last 15 minutes thinking about the UI decisions that they made. And I feel like after 6 days, my point was also not, again, I think Nilay's review is spectacularly good.
Yes.
Like, I really do. And I think that he's, he based on my hour with it, I think that he's getting to the core of what it is. I just think there is so much open space for everybody to talk about, write about, and think about this thing, because it's a whole platform. Yes. This doesn't strike me as being one of those things where it's like, what more is there to say about a new phone that is a little bit different from last year's phone after everybody's had it for a week, which is the thing I struggle with iPhone reviews. I'm not worried about having interesting things to observe about this thing, because there's a huge ocean of things to observe about it.
So in a way, really, it's more like 40 years ago when the Mac first came out, a brand new platform. It's going to take a while to really know what it's all about.
Yeah.
Years.
Nilay came up with a few negatives. One of his biggest points, and I thought it was an important point, is it's a VR headset that is emulating augmented reality with cameras and not doing the greatest job. All the limitations you might imagine with a camera. He says video pass-through is still video pass-through. You've got motion blur. It's not perfect, and
it's not.
That's a good point.
I had that same thought coming into it with my memory of last June, and then seeing it on Friday. I thought, oh, the field of view is less than I remember, and the quality of the image is less than I remember. And that's just because, you're dazzled by a brand new thing that you've seen for the first time. And then having spent 6 months sort of like replaying that memory, it was interesting to be in there and be confronted with the reality of it, which this thing isn't magic. It's probably cutting edge, the most cutting edge product that Apple has mass produced in a very long time in some ways, but it's still got lots of limitations.
Yeah. It's like the best airplane from 1911. Like, meaning that's not to denigrate anyone who made an airplane in 1911, but clearly it's going to take a while. For a lot of people, it's going to be very useful and very interesting and very fun. For some people, they're going to have to wait until 1928, let's say 1923, for the ones that can actually be steered.
I can't believe I ever used this. I look at this.
Yeah, he's holding up the original iPhone. Yeah, it's
not the original. This is version
3GS.
iPhone, This is the 3GS. This is the first one that did video, and I can't believe that I ever thought that this. And I thought, why would you ever need anything bigger? Why would you need anything better? Like it, when you. So again, I think it's limited. I think a lot of us have played with these for a long time, and that you kind of live inside of that limitation that it has right now. But I think that it does have to prove itself to be useful out for something. I think that one of the things is that only a very small handful of developers have had access to it up until Friday. And so, you can say, well, I can develop for it without seeing it, but it's really hard.
Why do you think more developers?
Not the developers I've talked to. The developers I've talked to, they get there because some of them have gone to labs. They've had labs in like New York and Cupertino and London and some other places, and you get 4 hours with it. Maybe they lock you in a room for 4 hours, and what they said is, I built something in the simulator and I thought I had it figured out, and the moment they ran their app on the hardware, they're like, oh no, I completely mistaken.
And that's why
it'll take time.
I spent years doing R&D for VR for a variety of companies, and so because you had to do it, you had to figure it out. There was a whole bunch of things we learned as we did it. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, this doesn't work. Or this really works way better than I thought. And so there's going to be a little bit of putting things on and playing with them and seeing what works and doesn't work. And I think that the reason that you were asking, Leo, about why Apple was super. I mean, they handed out a lot of these headsets to larger corporations, but the red tape for handing them out to have them at your location was incredible. Like it was, you have to have a room that can be.
Yeah, we read way back in the day. We
have,
read through that.
And that's been the case. And so it's been really hard for anybody to see it. And again, there's no reason to release it. So I think that you're going to see a fluttering of releases that happen between now and September. The first set being the people who are going to jump on it in the spring, and then WWDC is going to come out and show a bunch of new things. There's going to be a bunch of new libraries, and then you're going to see a bunch of updates in September, October that are probably when we really start to see what the headset can do. The headset is really going to start showing whether it's valuable or not, to what Andy was talking about earlier, sometime between October and December of this year. Like that's when we're really going to see, like, oh, is this a thing or not? Because that's when the developers have had enough time to work on it, to play with it, have the second round of WWDC. But that's when you're going to see it. And if it may not, we may get to that and go, man, it's not going to work. But
yeah. When I was reading the reviews this morning, for some reason, I started thinking about a famous quote by director Howard Hawks about, hey, what does it take to make a good movie? And he said, a good movie, all you need is 3 good scenes and no bad ones. And that's got me thinking about a brand new technology, or relatively brand new technology like the Vision Pro, which is that for this first generation, to be considered a success, all it needs is 3 good features and no really bad ones. And I know we're going to talk about the spooky vision goggles, spooky fake eyeballs thing, but that's not a critical key feature.
It's not a user feature, really, right? It's like a negative feature.
I mean, if the displays weren't crisp, if it wasn't pleasant to use, if the 3D effect was not good, if the eye tracking was not good, if the hand tracking were not good, then this would be a bad thing. But I'm getting nothing for if the battery life were so uncomfortable to use that, like, even you can't expend its battery life without feeling like I need to get this hot, heavy thing off my head. I think that it definitely passed the Howard Hawks test again. Here.
Yeah. I mean, the intriguing stuff, I just can't wait to try it. But like, there are these examples of, you get the big Mac screen in front of you and you've got your Mac laptop, let's say. So you've got the keyboard and the trackpad, and then you've got ancillary apps kind of like around for people who like multiple monitors. Those are iPad apps, but again, they're sort of accessories. That's interesting. I was struck, John Gruber from Daring Fireball hasn't written about it yet, but he did his podcast that he does with Ben Thompson. And I thought it was fascinating to listen to his 10-minute mini review, because essentially it begins with him saying, look, it's too heavy. It's awkward. The interaction model is a little bit weird. It's like remarkably negative about it. And they talk about all the challenges to be a first generation spatial computing device and how a lot of stuff just isn't quite there yet. And then Ben Thompson says, so what about the entertainment piece? And Gruber said, as an entertainment device, it's worth $3,500 now. And I thought that was like, well, I mean, for not for everybody, but I think it's an interesting kind of thing where, like, maybe that's the good scene, Andy, right? Like, maybe if you want and are not watching movies with friends and family, but are doing a lot of movies in hotel rooms or on airplanes or whatever, and that immersive video plus the 3D video and just movie watching in general, I can see it. Like, again, is that enough for this product to be a hit? No, but having a niche to hold on to while you build the platform is a good thing.
Yeah, and if we're not lowering the bar here, but like if we say that this is not like an iPhone, which is something that you're going to have on you the entire day and dipping into it like from time to time throughout an entire like waking day, and it's not going to be like a Mac where you're going to be focused on this and only this pretty much for a full 8-hour workday. If we can accept, and some people may not be able to agree with that, but if we can accept that this is a computing device that you're going to be using for an hour to maybe 90 minutes at a time, depending on how long the movie is, but like you're not, then I think that's another way of putting it in the right context. We talked about this for a few months now, where we have to find the balance between this is definitely a 1.0 product, this is definitely an ambitious product, and so we have to cut a little bit of slack. On the other hand, this is a consumer product that they're selling through a store for $3,500, so we do have to ask the questions of where is the point at which we say useful versus not useful. And I think that setting that expectation of it's not something you're going to be Joanna Stern did a course, did the wonderful thing of she repeated her experiment she did when Meta was first decided that they were all in on virtual reality. That okay, I'm going to wear this for 24 hours. I'm going to wear this for a whole day, even though that's absolutely not what Apple is saying you should be doing with this. But that's if we don't expect that that's what people are going to be using it for, then I think that leaves us open to really appreciating it for what it is, not for what we hope it will be 2 years from now, not for what we wish it was going to be after seeing a lot of people explain a 30-minute demo.
At what point can we say this is a complete flop and write it off?
Again, the first on-face fire of a device, which I don't think is going to happen.
I feel like this is one of those things we're going to talk about a lot for the next couple of weeks. Then we're going to talk less and less, and by come September,
honestly, I think it's unlikely. I think
Apple has more money.
Hit. Yeah, all right.
Apple. Well, no, it's not going to be a huge hit necessarily. In fact, I think it is incapable of being a huge hit at the volumes that they can make.
Yeah, they can only.
But Apple is deeply invested in the long-term status of this platform. They are deeply invested in it. And, you know, having a company with a whole lot of cash in the bank who wants to play the long game with a product is really all you need. So I think there'll be people who don't like it and write it off, but I think that it's going to be years before we can actually get a read on whether there's a future for this thing.
Yeah, I think we're in year 10 of a 20-year release cycle, and it is that what they're building is something that's 8
I'm
or
getting
10,
out of this
10 years
business.
out.
I'm going to announce my retirement right now. I do not want to be talking.
They're not going to stop. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop for 10 years.
We're going to cancel the show. No more Vision Pro Weekly. You guys can do it. I'm just going to go off and go ski with my goggles on or something.
Well, we do a Vision Pro segment, and you just show up a little late, and we'll talk about it.
That's it. There you go. Oh, I love that idea. From now on, the show will start at 11 Pacific. I'll arrive at about 11:20, which I do anyway.
Yeah.
And if for the first 20 minutes, you could talk about it. This chair will be empty, or maybe I'll just put some spooky eyes. So this was a pretty funny. By the way, I agree with you. I think Nilay Patel's written piece. I watched his video, but I think, boy, you know, it's really interesting how many of these reviews are video reviews. I guess that's the future. I don't know. I find a video review difficult because it's like you have to watch for 20 minutes to get the juice out of it. I just want to scan the article.
I find text reviews difficult because so many words.
Yeah, I know. You're the future. I'm the past. So but I think Neil nailed it, and we'll talk about a few things. But there was a few things in the videos that were worth it, especially with Joanna, doing a FaceTime. So here she is. She's scanning her face. You should watch Joanna Stern in the Wall Street Journal. She did ski with it, which is crazy. She cooked with it, which is crazy. Neither of which you're supposed to do. Now, look at her face, because we're going to then see a virtual version, which she didn't like. I actually thought it looked just like her, but maybe,
right?
Maybe that's part. I don't know. Anyway, that's her face. And then she joins, it's just a little like the Mona Lisa, actually. And then she joins a video conference.
I think you look awful. It's like Botox from hell.
So there's Nilay Patel.
And yes, FaceTiming with other people in Vision Pros is as crazy.
And there's Marquez Brownlee.
Yeah.
So this is, hey, one advantage of buying one of these is you'll be able to FaceTime with Joanna Stern, Marquez Brownlee, and Nilay Patel anytime you want.
Well, it does mean you can FaceTime and make sure your persona is immaculately dressed and shaved.
That's true.
And
shave, exactly.
Haired, done right, and makeup and everything you want. And then you can just be a slob lounging around in your bed, but your persona will be nice and neat.
Yeah.
I think it looks pretty much like her. I thought it looked enough like her to work. Is it Uncanny Valley? Is that the problem?
Oh, yeah. It's totally in an uncanny valley. It's going to be, again, we talked about a little bit before the show, but they spent all the money on Princess Leia and it still looked weird in Rogue One. And so the thing is that, doing it with a consumer headset is never going to, and of the things that I've seen so far, the fidelity of the movement, the problem is that for a million years, we have spent a lot of time making decisions about what people think based on very, very small movements in their face, and a resolution that is still way beyond the typical capture systems. And so as a result, we're more sensitive to the face than anything else that we see in the world, because that is very tied to our survival from a species. And so the thing is that the fact that it's a little lower resolution is super weird. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to come in to an office hours with it. I'm going to try to, come into this show with it at some point. I'm going to try it. I actually don't think that part of this thing really works. I think for a quick call, like, hey, I'm in the headset and I don't want to take it off to answer your call. Fine. For anything longer than that, not fine. Like it's not going to work.
Can I say just one thing? The only thing I don't agree with you about that is that remember that the Princess Leia from Rogue One, that was being financed by Disney. This is being financed by Apple, who's not willing to basically cheap out on the digital effects because they absolutely don't care about the end product. So I think that I am more optimistic than that. But that is just quickly that is a very an excellent point. That like if we it's possible that if you are going to be having like an hour-long conversation with someone about something important, where it's important that your point of view comes across, and it's important that the person understand that, hey, look, when I'm cutting your budget, it's not because like this is a political thing. It's because here are the dynamics of what's going on right now. We have total respect for your team. Your team's a very important blah, blah, blah. Like maybe you're going to want to turn that off because the subtle stuff that people are like you say, that we are basically programmed over 140,000 years of evolution to figure out is not there. And so we're basically not seeing empathy. We're not able to connect emotionally. But what is this person saying? What are they doing?
But at the same time, maybe you also want to turn off your virtual background and use a camera that doesn't look like what
maybe you don't want to be an Avengers Tower. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what everybody in the news looks like on Sunday morning. It's so bad.
I think, Alex, I agree with you. I think it is both a brilliant feature in that I'm shocked at how good it is. And it's also not good enough, right? It's both those things. And that's where you're in the uncanny valley. I don't mind Apple trying to do this. I love that they're trying to do this, and maybe they will get it right in a few years. I am baffled by I got to say, it's probably the pride that all of us, I think, assumed for a long time that Memoji existed specifically so that you would have a representative of yourself when Apple did its VR thing. And as far as I can tell, you can only represent yourself as this avatar, not as something like a Memoji. And I think it's a huge misfire because first off,
I agree.
First off, what if you're uncomfortable with what you look like as that thing? But also you've got all these other issues of like, what if you're uncomfortable with you can't get a good representation, or you're somebody who has, body dysmorphia issues and other things like that, where you're like, you don't like your face and you don't want to use it as your representation. Why? I had a friend say to me today, he says, I don't want to see my dumb old face. I want to be like a cool monster or something. I'm like, yeah, exactly. I can't believe, and I have to say, I think the reason is because they had this tech and they invested so much in it, and they didn't want to make it seem like they were wimping out and just having you use a cartoon version. But the cartoon version of you or of something else is I would much rather be a cartoon version of me or a fantasy character or something than a dead-eyed digital replica. And you should be able, Apple should give people the choice to do that. And I cannot believe that they haven't done that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's interesting because I feel like they're going to say at WWDC, here's the Memoji now. Like they're going to pull up because it feels like such a, like maybe they're going to get everyone to try it first with the head or whatever, and then they'll give us back the emojis because the emojis are really fun. And like I don't send stickers where I'm sending pictures of me with my thumbs up like this, like
right.
I don't do that. I the emoji's great. And it's
only egomaniacs send stickers of their actual picture of their face. Don't do it.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No. All I was going to say is that I do think that, the technology doesn't get better if you don't use it. So putting it into the product, as Jason said, it allows them to see how it is. I do think that road is actually longer than the next 2 or 3 versions of this to get good at, because I've done facial capture for a long time. It's really hard. And it's even harder when you're doing it from a headset that's sitting right on top of you, because it's changing how your face is working. It's literally pushing up against your face. So, all your muscles are not doing what they're normally doing. It's so hard to do what they're doing. And I think it will take them a long time. Again, what I see as someone FaceTimes me and I need to answer the phone. I need to answer that call real quickly on a Zoom or on a FaceTime or whatever. It's going to be supported in Zoom. Like, hey, how's it going? And answer a couple questions and then jump off and go back to what I was doing without having to take my headset off to answer it. That, I think it's nice to have the feature there to do that thing. I wouldn't ever enter a meeting that way, but I won't rarely enter a meeting without this studio that I'm in right now. Like I'll just turn the camera off altogether if I'm not going to not have it set up well. So because I do think that it matters what you look like when you're trying to make a point.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting in some of the demos that we saw in videos today that I forget whether it was Nilay or somebody else who was basically saying that like if your hands enter like the frame, it will also reproduce your hands in some fashion.
Yes.
And they mentioned that it seemed as though they were trying, maybe it was just for the purpose of the demo, but it seemed as though they had to be a little bit Italian with their really extreme gestures to basically, your hands don't basically actually land here, but at least when you're trying to do this or this, like actually for real, a thumbs up, like it would actually enter the frame. That's interesting. I'm also keen to see, like as a couple 100,000 people start to use these things, how much variance in faces and heads is that system going to accommodate? Like if I have a friend who suffered a catastrophic injury and their facial structure is very, 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 very not what a default avatar would look like. Will it I'm keen to see if it will handle that very, very well, because that is that to me, like if I were on the engineering team, I would almost see that as a deal breaker, or I would argue on behalf of the idea that if we can't make every face that is able to that has binocular vision and will be using this headset, if I can't get every face accommodated, then we shouldn't use this feature at all, because that is a way of basically saying, oh, by the way, we're shutting the door on you. Once you put this headset on, we regard you as something other, and so we are not going to give you this feature.
It'll be interesting to see. I have a feeling that I do think that if you're very far out of if you're in the 0.1% of something, it may be harder for it to find that. Sure. I think that if we look at MetaHuman, which is what Epic builds, the amount of detail that Epic can do with just a couple sliders is kind of, you can build lots and lots and lots of things that are very original. And I think that you probably match people pretty effectively. So I think that it'll look like most people will find that it may not look perfect. None of us think our CG version looks the same way that we do. But I think that it will look close to, and it'll look like that person because it doesn't take very much to get someone pretty close to what they look like. But I think that you're right, that I think if you have some significant changes from the norm, again, if you're in that 0.1%, it's probably outside of the spec.
If you have a palsy, that's something that should be accommodated. I wonder, but what do you think? Like, I'm also like Jason. I'm surprised that like this is what you get. You can't use something else, and you can't really modify it. Like I can see the argument that Apple says, no, you can't. We won't let you get like a video game type avatar where you can basically create a fake persona, because there's a certain truth that gets lost there. But I'm surprised you can't simply say I'm surprised you can't get a set of sliders, kind of like how you on the photo editing app, that you just basically say, I want more detail, less detail, or I want the eyes to be a little bit more open or a little bit less open. I will say that the concern that I would have in that area is there's a certain way that the motion capture applies to the face. And so Apple probably needs, if you start moving those sliders around, that translation can, and again, I think that and some animation works better or worse based on adjustments that you make to the head. And so if you start, and again, at some point it becomes pencils down. Like this is where we are right now. And there's Steve Jobs, I think, famously said, people, I don't know what engineers are, people who make things that ship, so at some point you have to ship it and go, this is as good as we have it right now. I have never worked on a product that I released that I couldn't see 2 or 3 versions down. Like I can see 2 or 3 versions where I can go with this, but this is what goes out today, and so I think that there's a lot of things that we're looking at that the engineers already know where they want to be 3, 4, 5 years from now, and the technology isn't there to do it, and they need the gamma testing. They need us to use it. All those little things to say, can we send information back to Apple when things go wrong,
or, and when they see people using it, all of that's going to affect what happens next, and so there'll be a lot of error correction, and there's just no way to do it without putting it out. There's no way to do it in the lab. You have to do it by putting it in the ground. So at some point, Apple has to just drop these in. They're going to be heavy. They're not going to work as well. The screens aren't going to work as well. I already know as a producer that the resolution and the frame rate are lower than what would be optimum, for that experience. And I think folks there know it as well. I think that's where the processors are. That's where we can get things in that package. And so I think that this is very much a version 1 through 3. Like when we compare this to this, they're very different phones. And I think that we're going to have things. And Apple doesn't need this to make money for a decade. Like they don't need it. They can burn money into the ground for this little thing. And they may come out with an entirely different product that doesn't look like a headset at all. That just happened to be, this is the part of the technology that worked. And they have the luxury of being one of the largest companies in the world. They can, a lot of people like Google makes lots of things that don't go anywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that they have the only countdown timer that Apple's facing is how long will it take before Sony starts selling these displays to other manufacturers. That's another thing that I was thinking about this morning. That most of the people who were reviewing these have lots of experience with VR and AR, like since like 2010, 2011, 2012, and they're saying, "Oh my God, the display is like so many leagues above everything else." So. In the absence of a real breakthrough in user interface, and here's what a VR app should be like. Here's why we're going to have AR pass through, so that's really, really relevant to what people are going to be using for 2 or 3 hours at a time. That's still a core advantage. How good these displays are.
The displays are good.
And 2 or 3 years from now, if Sony is now selling this to Meta, still is selling this to and creating their own Sony headsets, that's one advantage that's going to sort of be diminished. So, but I'm sure that Apple's going to have 2 or 3 years more of runtime before that.
And in 3 years they'll release another one that is the one that we have now will become the regular one, and it'd be $1,500, and the Pro one will be the same price or more, and it'll be better. 8K per eye, 120 frame per second flat, that kind of thing. And the other thing I will say though is that as someone who's worked on some version of a headset for a long time, that what Apple's doing is super hard. Like it is, this is a hard thing, and it's not just the display. It is the entire operating system. It is every app. It is there is an enormous amount of things that, like for instance, one thing they pointed out in the Zoom that I'm looking forward to is that Zoom supports USDZ. I can throw into a Zoom event, I can send you, I don't know exactly how it is, but I think it's just in chat. I can say, here, look at this 3D model, and pop open a 3D model in Zoom while I'm talking to you about it. And that's now the USDZ Apple started 8 years ago, I think. It's a very old format now that Apple started, but Apple was thinking about this headset when they created that format, or when and when they started pushing down that format. And so the thing is that there's an enormous amount that even if you could do that, the advantage that Apple has is they have the OS, they have they have the environment, they have all the other apps that just roll into it, they have all the integration with all the other things that are there, and they have MLS. They didn't buy MLS so that they get into sports for Apple TV. Let's be clear that the MLS stuff will most likely, there'll be a lot of sports features that pop out, because they have total control over that. So they can say, hey, we can take you to the last goal, and you can just stand on the on the pitch while they're playing, for that moment. You don't have to watch the whole game that way, because actually looking from above is much better. But you're going to see them experiment with lots and lots of things around MLS. And what they're doing is they're selling that platform. And again, it's a really hard thing to get into, and it's an even harder thing to catch up. And so I think that that's going to be the hard part, for a lot of manufacturers, is that Apple and Meta are going to go in head to head, and it's going to be really hard to break in. I think Sony will maybe, but Sony has not been super successful with their headset so far. And I think that the problem is that it's really hard and it's really expensive. The development is incredibly expensive. and the content development is incredibly expensive. And so this is a very rich person's game. There's not that many people trying to go to space. And this is kind of one of those things, like that. And so there's like there's like 5 companies that have the money to play this game with Apple. And that's part of why you do it as Apple, is that they're playing a game that no one else can play.
I think it's analogous to Jeff Bezos's penis rocket. Exactly. All right. I guess, at this point we could go through, Nilay raised the point, and you actually raised this as well, Jason, that the EyeSight feature is not what you can now know why Apple didn't really show it. He says the front display on the Vision Pro is an attempt at keeping you from being isolated from other people while you're wearing it. Well, too bad you're isolated. In Apple's photos, it looks like a big bright screen that shows a video of your eyes to people around you so they feel comfortable talking to you while you're wearing the headset. It's a feature adorably called EyeSight, says Nilay. In reality, it might as well not be there. It's a low-res OLED with a lenticular panel in front of it to provide a mild 3D effect, and it's so dim and the cover glass is so reflected, it's actually hard to see in most normal to bright lighting. And when they do see your eyes, it's a low-res ghostly image of them that feels like CGI. The effect is uncanny. The idea that you'll be making real eye contact with anyone is a fantasy. And there are no controls or indicators in Vision OS for this external display, so you never really know what other people are seeing. Imagine looking someone directly in the eyes and talking to them without knowing if they could see your eyes. It's weird.
Yeah, the initial reactions to this from people like Nilay make me think immediately that whoever won that argument inside Apple that said no, probably Johnny Ive or one of the other designers on the team way back when, of like, oh no, we need to keep people present and we need to indicate and like that whole conversation that they had that led them to spend lots of money on a separate external display just to let you know that the person could see you, and then use the digital avatar and all these things, right? It's so clear now, I think, that that's the first thing that you drop on version 2, on the lower cost version, on all of them, because you can put a little thing like at the top of a HomePod that sort of indicates that it's in use or indicates attention, without it being a whole display with a lenticular screen. But the sound of this, like all the video you see and all the photos you see now are just nothing like what Apple had in its PR about what that screen looks like. It's dim and weird and completely, it sounds like, unnecessary. I admire the idea of like, I want you to know when I can see you, but it screams over-engineered waste of money now. So it seems like that's going to be a quick one.
It's the touch bar of the Vision Pro.
Yeah, or the digital touch from the Apple Watch, right? That thing where it was like, oh, you can send your heartbeat to someone else, and everybody was like, no, why? And the next year they're like, okay, forget it.
Yeah,
We're not going to do that anymore. I think that one is going to be a goner.
Yeah. And I think that you have to keep on experimenting, and some of those are going to work and some of them aren't. And that's part of what they have to do over the next 2 or 3 years, is to put stuff out, and some of it's going to be dumb. And this is probably one. I still think that, I think that the eyes, we'll see what happens. I think that it could be something like, again, there's very little interaction with other people that I think you would want to do for a very long period of time. Yeah. So this is more someone's interrupting your movie and you look over, or someone's interrupting your experience and you're looking over to say something to them, mostly like, hey, I'm in an experience and don't talk to me anymore. But it means, or that someone's bringing you your coffee on the plane while you're watching a movie or something like that. That's where these things are would be the most useful, or a short call, not in any kind of extended use case, in my opinion.
So we did buy one, not for me, but for Micah. Micah will be unboxing his and doing a hands-on February 2nd. In fact, what I'd love it is if he could do a FaceTime with you, Alex, and you, Jason. Yeah. With yours, I'm sure you're getting yours on February 2nd, and then we could see how y'all look in your FaceTime, and
we'll let you know when I'll email Micah and everybody else when I get.
And I'll come for the people saying, well, how could you talk about it without trying it on? Believe me, I've tried every one of these on up to now. I can't see anything that's so different in this that would make me go, oh, I get it now. But I'll try it on February 2nd. Maybe I will. You do have to be a member of Club Twit if you're not yet a member. Now you know where your $7 is going. 500 of you paid for Micah to buy this piece of. Never mind. No. In fact, Micah's promised that unless there is something magical, he will return it in the 2-week time frame. You only get 2 weeks to try this thing, which is interesting. If you are a member of Club Twit, your money is not going to that. It is going to John Ashley's salary, to John Slanina's salary. It's going to the editors, Kevin King, and it's going to the lighting bill in the studio. We need the money because advertising support is dwindling, and I'm seeing podcast networks go by the wayside rapidly last year, and I'm sorry to say it's going to happen this year as well. Newspapers are failing. Magazines are going out of business. The advertisers don't seem to want to support quality media, quality journalism. That means you have to, I'm sorry to say, $7 a month. I hope you will, because I think what we're doing is important. And, you know, you got to support the one guy who really thinks the Vision Pro is a piece of crap. Join right now, support the 3 people on this panel who can't wait to get one. Twit.tv/clubtwit. And we thank you in advance. It's also going to pay these fine panelists as well, I might add. And I think $7 is very reasonable. You get special events. iOS Today is in the club now. You get the ad-free versions of the show. I think we've given you enough benefits, but mostly you do it because you want to keep Twit on the air. And Leo complaining about this.
Yeah, it's entertaining. I love this dynamic. I know that people out there are like, they're going to say nice things and Leo's going to poo-poo. And I think having a dynamic when we have different takes on something like this keeps us all honest, right? Yeah. Instead of getting with the group think of like, it's all good or it's all bad. I think it's going to be really interesting.
When you look at the review lineups, everybody pretty much did the same thing, which is, this is great, this is amazing, it's going to blow your mind, but, by the way, most Apple reviews these days are that, which is, this is great stuff, and then there's a few things we don't like. And I think that there are a number of those. Battery life is exactly what Apple said. You might be able to watch a movie, but as Joanna Stern showed, you can plug that battery pack into the wall and wear that thing as long as you want. It is a pretty scant battery. It's not a huge battery.
Yeah. It's a little bit surprising, isn't it? Because they took the battery pack off of the headset to make it lighter. But so long as we're making this something that's going to be in your pocket or on the table, why not add an extra? Why not figure out what the longest movie that people are going to want to see, or why not give people more than 2.5 hours? Why not give people 3? I'm sure there are lots of reasons why, but it's like okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And you can't hot swap them either.
It powers it down when you take it off, and it's about a minute boot up. Somebody said, yeah. Justine screamed when she saw her Macintosh displayed in front of her. They are pushing it as a productivity tool. Joanna said she was very glad to get her real keyboard back. That Hunt and Peck keyboard, virtual keyboard, isn't very good.
There's a good video. It's long, so I don't recommend. I mean, you should watch it if you love it. But Brian Tong did a video that's 60 minutes long. But in that video, there is some really amazing stuff showing, he takes a Mac and pulls out a giant Mac screen, but then lays a bunch of iPad apps around in that accessory way. But he's typing on the keyboard and using the trackpad. And then I think in the category, we may have to put universal control in the category of features Apple introduced that in hindsight were built for a product that wasn't out yet. Because one of the things Brian Tong shows is that he's using his Mac cursor with the trackpad on his laptop, and then he just mouses over to one of those iPad apps that's elsewhere in the 3D space, and the pointer goes. It's universal control works in Vision Pro and Vision OS too. That's really interesting because then you can foresee a scenario where you've got a Mac and a bunch of Vision Pro or iPad apps, and you got your hands on the keyboard and the trackpad, and you've got this kind of control center. And not everybody likes to work that way. I'm actually mostly a one monitor kind of guy, but it's an interesting idea that I know a lot of people are going to like, and it is. I'm impressed by the fact that universal control truly does work in that environment, that you can take your trackpad right off of the Mac screen in the Vision Pro and put it over on the calendar you've got to the left, or the messaging app you've got above, or whatever, and it actually just works.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if people will like it or not, but the story of this whole thing, right? Is like I think it's so clever and interesting, and will you want to work that way? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a percentage, 5, 10%. There's people who actually think it's cool to throw a USDZ object into your Zoom meeting. And for those people, this will be a valuable thing. I don't think it's a mass market product, which might be a problem for Apple because they want this to be the replacement for the iPhone, or at least the next thing for Apple, right?
Well, I think one of the challenges is that it's the amount of work it takes to get to this, if it's going to be the future. Apple's making so much money now, they could pivot. And they could pivot 10 years from now and still, or sometime 5 years from now.
Yeah, it's smart for them to invest in this.
Else.
I'm not saying they're doing a bad thing by investing in this now.
I actually have always thought that all the money they give back to, all the dividends, they should be investing in R&D about new products, like it. So I think that it's good that they're spending a bunch of money on thinking about new ideas. And but they, again, I think the iPhone's got another 5 or 10 years at least of runway that's probably going to sell above 200 million units a year. And so I think that it's a good time to try to figure out what might be next. And I think what Apple sees is what's next is glasses that don't look much thicker than the ones I'm wearing right now. They just can't do that yet.
And I see flying cars as next. Neither one is likely in the next decade. So
when I look at how people drive, I do not think they're flying cars. Like I'm definitely a big.
Here's a scary.
This
is, by the way, Brian Tong has the right title for his review. He says Apple Vision Pro epic review, is spatial computing the future, and that's that's the question to ask. Here's iJustine, Marquez Brownlee, and Brian all in another one of these creepy meetings. Does not look like iJustine. I have to say.
Eyes are too wide open.
It kind of does. See, that's the thing. It kind of does. And there are moments when Marquez Brownlee talks where he doesn't seem like a mannequin and he seems real. And then other moments where he seems like a mannequin. And it's weird.
Yeah, and we're also overlooking. We're also focusing completely on like the consumer aspect of this. There's an existing market for $3,500 VR headsets for industry, for training, for the medical industry, for all these different. The U.S. Army is probably looking for a new supplier for their new VR AR projects. So I mean, they can until the technology develops to the point where you can make $1,000 headset that lots of people are going to find relevant to their daily use. They can make a fine profit and a fine long period of time selling these to researchers and selling these to people who are just going to be running mostly software that they have developed for them and for their use case.
Brian will be on Twit, by the way, either this week or I think it's maybe next week. So we will get his, or maybe not. Oh, I thought we had him on. I guess not. We're hoping to get him on in the next couple of weeks. So he'll have a little more time with us and we'll get his even more thorough review. And of course, next week, I expect at least 2 of the panel members to join us with googly eyes.
Yeah.
I'll join with googly eyes, but not with
Appley eyes.
Appley eyes.
Not googly eyes.
Before we move on, anything else you think we should remark upon? Is there...
Oh, I just one thing, which is my demo came with the dual strap instead of that single strap.
And you want that, don't you?
And I will tell you, I didn't try the single knitted strap again, but I will tell you, in June, we couldn't get a good fit. And I don't know if it was the light shield or the cushion or the strap, but I couldn't get a good fit. I was moving it up and down. I was tightening it and loosening it. Couldn't get a good fit. It was kind of uncomfortable for the full half hour. And I will say this for my demo last Friday. I used the dual strap. I adjusted it. It's just a little Velcro, little fold over thing so you can pull it tighter or looser. And I had no discomfort whatsoever for that half hour that I was using it.
Good.
So I suspect among the things that they're going to pull off of this thing over time, like that front screen, I suspect maybe they thought that super luxe adjustable strap, the single strap, was going to be the answer, and that the more people who used it, the more they realized, oh, this actually much less, it's a low frills dual strap. It's not fancy knit anything, but it's comfortable. So I wonder if the fancy strap will just go away and they'll just say, no, everybody needs to use this thing.
I think these go full beanie. It's just a hat. In fact, I'm ready for a whole helmet. Just a whole helmet. Just bring it down. Just put the helmet on. Why not?
They did, by the way, they did launch actual ads. The first round of ads were just kind of get ready, the future's coming, and pictures of, Iron Man wearing his mask and a bunch of sci-fi stuff. The ads they debuted on the NFL playoffs this weekend were much more lengthy and had, for some reason, a long-haired hippie demonstrating these things. He even had a friendship bracelet. I mean, I guess I don't know. I'm not sure I understand what the agency was trying to position this as. Maybe as like this is going to be the cool new hip thing that people are really in touch with the future will be wearing. Anyway, I think that there'll probably be a dedicated Super Bowl ad in a couple of weeks. I would be shocked if we do one.
At least a couple. Yeah. They're sponsoring the halftime. So that
that's right. They are. Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if something. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some ad. Way to or a way to watch the halftime thing in Vision Pro.
Wouldn't that be cool? Then you really would have bragging rights against all of us poor unwashed masses. Is to reiterate Brian's question, which I think is a good one, is spatial computing the future of computing?
Not until the hardware catches up. We're like talking about desktop computing at a time where in 1964, 1965, we can come up with all these conjectures, we can come up with all these demos, but until the hardware matches up to something that is relevant to people's daily lives, I don't think this is going to happen for a long, long time. And I think, and we're also looking, we also can't look past the fact that even when we do get these clear, the ability to have high definition displays are basically based in pass through clear lenses, we're still going to have to convince people to put something on your face that you're not going to be putting on your face ordinarily. Like if you're kind of lucky if you happen to have bad vision anyway, that we can say, oh great, we can put display technology into the eyeglasses that you have worn every day since you were 16 or 17. These people that are wearing contacts because they don't want to wear glasses, because this is another thing to take care of. It's another set of lenses to clean. It's another thing to keep an eye on. That's going to be a hard. I shouldn't say hard. Well, that's going to be an interesting conversation to have with society, to say that how useful can this wearable be if it makes you put something on your face.
I like Alex's idea of having a bucket hat VR. I think that's a good idea. Just
think about all the processing, all the processing you could add to it in the helmet,
and your head never gets cold. It's great.
Yeah, you could have that. You could have the air be. There was, I think the Dyson had that thing that goes around the front of you that would go through your air, so you can be like totally.
But you're going completely Iron Man. You're going the sealed in.
I'm all in on the Iron Man. Like just throw a helmet on, and I think.
Bane, DC Cinematic Universe, not Marvel Cinematic Universe.
He doesn't have a mask over his head. That would like a.
Oh no, it does. No, I'm sorry. The Dyson thing, but we're also seeing.
I'm saying if you add the headset with the Dyson thing, you'll end up with the helmet. Like you just pull it down.
Yeah, and that's so long as everybody's wearing helmets and nobody can actually see each other wearing these things.
I'm so old-fashioned. I like having a 5K screen that I can. It's actually in front of me. By the way, you might, and when I go to the movies or I watch movies at home where we have a nice big screen and great sound, I feel like that's very immersive, and I can share that popcorn. By the way, notice every single video, it seemed like, where they put it on to watch a movie, they brought out popcorn. This is going to be so great for popcorn sales because for some reason you got to eat popcorn.
Well, no, I can tell you why. Is because it's really hard to eat. The reason they're using popcorn, as someone who's tested a lot of headsets, it's really hard to eat popcorn with a Meta headset.
Oh,
you can't see anything.
You can't. So
it's
see,
really
now
hard
you can
to see what's going on. So the reason that they're
really
showing the popcorn is they're like, hey, try to do this.
You're sitting on a couch with your loved ones and all watching the same movie at the same time.
Yeah. Joanna tried to drink some wine and she had this thing. I did a VR poker session with a bunch of friends using a MetaQuest, and I had my beer and they kept saying like, Jason, why is your avatar staring at the ceiling? And it was because I'm trying to drink the beer, but it's like hitting my nose and hitting the goggles, and you're like, and it's like, so what I'm saying is one word. Straws. Invest in straws.
Exactly.
Actually, that's a good accessory. Apple kind of missed the boat on that. They could add a $99 straw.
Well, Apple straw.
Really,
I think, as a maturing family, that we have, where we have a 15 and 16-year-old, we all sit around and watch some movies together, but the vast majority of our viewing is isolated. Like we would not.
I sit next to my wife. And I don't think I ever want to, be sitting next to my wife and we're both wearing our Vision Pros watching a movie. I don't think that's the
use case, though. I mean, I think that the use case.
Well, I think one of the reasons they put those stupid eyes on the front is because they realize the biggest issue with this is it's isolative.
Yeah.
In fact, in the ad, this new ad, all of the scenes, I know. Some people go, hey, that's great. In this ad, almost all the scenes, except for the last one, he's alone. Noticeably alone, like he's in the kitchen all by himself. Joanna in the kitchen all by herself.
I will say that we always have to remember that there's not everybody has people in the house with them either. And so the thing is that there is a certain level of escapism. If this had been released in 2020 or 2019, it would have been a pretty big hit during COVID, where I had friends that were doing really well and in general, but they're stuck in an apartment that is, they're stuck in a studio apartment in somewhere in the United States, and they can't go anywhere, and they can't see their friends. And it was pretty isolating and pretty, I had the luxury of having a family and being able to, hang out and so on and so forth, but they did not. And I think that it was pretty hard on them. And I think that there's a lot of folks that would love to have the ability when there's not a lot of people around to step out of where they live.
And I think it's a mistake to this is something that I'm trying to remember for myself as I start to write and talk about this sort of stuff, where I think it's a mistake to regard this as a replacement for the phone or as a replacement for a laptop. This is something that can find its own lane, just like the phone found its own lane, just like the Apple Watch found its own lane. And they all work together so well that you tend to see this as part of the Apple ecosystem that you've bought into. And so the times where it's appropriate to use your Vision Pro, you're going to use your Vision Pro. The times where it's appropriate to be in front of your MacBook, you're going to be in front of your MacBook. And you can't, I'm going to try really hard not to be faulting the Vision Pro for not being as good for 4 or 5 hours of intense work. I'm not like Jason. I am the sort of person who likes to have multiple screens, and for some reason it makes my brain happy to think that, well, your social media stuff is in this window here, that your research is in this big screen over here, and the stuff you're actually creating is in this screen down here. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to have as much as the Vision Pro will allow me to put 6 screens anywhere I want, 9 screens, 100 screens, probably not 100 screens. That's not the way that I want to use it, but that's not the way that I will use it if I ever were. If one falls off a truck and I might,
we'll sell you ours for only $2,000, Andy. How about
Speaking of completely bananas things that I want to try out, I think it was Brian Tong's video. He showed the NBA app. Yeah, it was Brian Tong, and he's got an NBA game going, and then another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And as somebody who's a fan of the quad box on Fubo TV or the ESPN app, the idea that I could have a bunch of sports screens all over, that actually sounds like a lot of fun. So we'll see. We'll see if it's good in practice, but I like the idea that I can bring up the MLB app and just kind of put a bunch of games around and just have them there. That's cool. I like it.
Well, and again, I think that even in a single game, I think I mentioned this before, but some of the stuff that we had done in the past was you're at a watching golf, and we just take all the graphics that just send you a clean feed, and all you're watching is the golf cut and listening to them talk. But all the stat board is always there for you with all the information that you need on one side, your social media, your email, everything else is on the other side. You just look over or whatever you want to throw over there is over on the other side. And every once in a while, you can go into an immersive thing and stand on the green while someone is putting. And all of those things are things that we'll probably see within the first year that are there. And I think some people will enjoy those.
You can shout "You the man" while it's being put without making yourself look like a total fool to everybody on the green and watching.
Exactly. And again, this is an edge case. I think that Apple couldn't make more than 10 million in the next 3 years if they tried. And I think they'll sell everyone they can make.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah. At a loss, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That's how you get things started. And the ability to absorb loss is why big companies are big companies.
Right. Right. Right.
That'll make the antitrust regulators real happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have to remember that all the fights that we're having with iOS do not apply to the headset. So, so Apple is building a whole new place, and everybody that they're in a fight with now, will probably
So Jason,
not have a bunch of development partnerships.
you like this idea of having 5 games going on at the same time?
Oh man, I do that. Not only is there NFL Sunday Ticket where you can often we'll put up the Octobox and things like that, but I use on Fubo TV, and especially college football season, I will put up 4 different games on my TV. I love that, and I would like that for more things. Wow, so the nice thing about this is, unlike the Apple TV, which requires an API that nobody, you can't mix and match. I can't take ESPN and an Apple TV stream of an MLS game and my Fubo TV of a Fox Sports channel and put them all up there. Vision Pro, every window. This is something that Nile made the point about too, which I think is interesting. Is we think about what Apple has done with windowing. There's no windows on the iPhone. The iPad windowing is extremely constrained because they're like afraid to do like what the Mac does. The Mac is chaos, right? The Mac is put windows wherever, add monitors, we don't care. So the trend for Apple up to now has been all these new platforms. Apple wants complete control and neatness and wants everything in its right place, and that is it. And with the Vision Pro, Apple's philosophy is put windows wherever the heck you want. Put them on the ceiling, put them on the fridge. We don't care. And I think as a Mac user, I really like that. The fact that Apple is like, put them wherever you feel comfortable, because that's how I use my Mac. And that's where I feel constrained using an iPad. So yeah, and it means there doesn't need to be a magic API. I could put, theoretically, if all the apps are there, I can put a Fubo TV window here and an ESPN window here and an Apple TV soccer game here, and they don't need to know that the other ones are running because I control the windowing. It's great. I love that idea.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And I have to admit that, and I'm assuming I can take multiple Macs and put their put
no,
them on.
I think it's one at a time right now, and I don't know what the limitations are, why they don't. They also won't let you do a multiple monitor, even though you can do that in the screen sharing. So there must be some reasons there. I hope they do that a little bit better, because wouldn't it be nice if you could put multiple Macs or multiple monitors from one Mac?
As someone who has 6 Macs and 8 screens on my desk right now, yes, like I'm used to Windows. Like I'm used to lots of Windows, and they represent different Macs and different windows on those Macs and everything else. And I realized that part of my incredible distaste for laptops that grew. I mean, I literally lived on a laptop for 25 years, and now I will barely open one. And it's because I'm so used to all these screens. Like every day, all day, I'm sitting here with screens all around me, and I'm not. And I go to a laptop, and I feel like I'm like looking through like a little pipe.
I predict in 25 years there will be this special TWI bespoke device that you can buy at great expense that has a single screen on it. And people, all the hipsters will go, yeah, man, I'm simplifying my life. I just want
how retro.
Yeah, I like to take pictures of it with my Polaroid and use it and listen to my 8-track tape and my albums. So,
I guess some writers can't handle a monospace font, but when you're just in tune with your words as I am, you don't need these frills like.
Let you focus, man.
Like
let you focus and be mindful about where you are.
Our club members in the Discord are asking if the M2 is underpowered for this. What do you think, Jason? I guess they could put an M3 in the next version of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably fine. Right? Like I'm sure there are limitations. The M2. I don't know if M2 to M3 would have made much of a difference. I'm sure that the next one that they do will have something even more advanced. Keep in mind, too, it's not just the M2. It's also that whole R1 subprocessor that they're using that's taking a lot of the load here.
What is the R1 doing in this?
I think it's doing a lot of image signal processing and I/O. I think it's stuff that on a Mac you might have, using the onboard chip to do, and they have offloaded all of that. Because remember, according to, I think it's Nile, the camera processing happens so quickly that Apple says that by the time your eyes see one frame of the pass-through, the next frame is right behind it. Like it's taking the next frame. They've minimized the lag. You have to have custom silicon to do that. But that is offloading that work from the M2.
12 millisecond photon to photon latency, to be exact.
Oh.
Yeah, it's latency is a big deal, and it's really hard to do. It's like I spend a lot of time working on latency, and it is getting that kind of latency is incredible.
Well, you need that. I mean, gamers want 4 millisecond response time in a CRT, so you need that if you want to play games, and I think there'll be people trying to do that too. Anyway, the reviews are out. Friday, we mortals will be getting ours. We'll do an unboxing, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. what is that? I don't know. 2100 UTC. We will be opening Micah's, unboxing it, and maybe we'll have a FaceTime group hug in it. So stay tuned.
It'll be chilling and awkward.
Chilling and awkward.
Because of the avatars, but still.
Our show today brought to you by, we're going to move on to other topics, but there's your Vision Pro segment. A mere hour.
Leo, you can come into the studio now. Leo, it's
back.
okay. We're safe.
I'm safe. I don't know. I feel like, honestly, maybe I'm just too old for this. Maybe I'm too stuck in the past, and that there is such a thing as spatial computing. It's more than just a marketing term, and I'm somehow missing the boat. And if that's the case, that's fine, But I guess I'm the wrong person to comment on this. So you all enjoy your spatial computing. I'm just be here in the corner with my Cracker Barrel and my checkers, yelling at the clouds. Our show today brought to you by CashFly. For over 20 years, CashFly has held the track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery. You can see that's becoming more and more important, isn't it? CashFly serves over 5,000 companies in over 80 countries. The reason we chose CashFly and organizations like ours consistently choose CashFly: scalability, reliability, and unrivaled performance. CashFly gives you ultra-low latency video streaming, video to over 1 million concurrent users with no latency. Lightning fast gaming that delivers downloads faster, but when you start playing, zero lag, glitches, or outages. You get mobile content optimization. Websites really benefit from this automatic and simple image optimization. Your site loads faster no matter what size screen, no matter what size device. You also get flexible month-to-month billing for as long as you need it, and discounts for fixed terms once you're happy. You design your own contract when you switch to CashFly. And don't forget CashFly's elite managed packages. You get VIP treatment and a dedicated account manager who will be with you from day one, making sure you get a smooth implementation and reliable 24/7 support when you need it. CashFly, delivering rich media content up to 159% faster than other major CDNs. Join CashFly, the world's fastest CDN. Jumpstart your journey with CashFly with a complimentary first month, or give it a whirl with a free 5 terabyte account. Just go to cashfly.com/twit. That's CACHEFLY, cashfly.com/twit. We thank them so much, not only for their support as an advertiser, but for 10 years of providing us with their RCDN with the best performance and service. CashFly. Let's see. We are seeing some interesting drum beats about iOS 18. I know it's hard to believe, but WWDC is coming up in just a few months, and there is evidence that there's going to be a lot of AI built in. That's what Samsung did with its new S24 Ultra. They're using the Gemini models from Google, at least for the everywhere but China. In China, they're using Baidu. Apple, do we know what iOS 18 will be? Gurman's saying it will be the biggest update in a long time.
Yeah, that would track if they put a lot of AI into Shlomo. That would be pretty big. For the past 2 or 3 years, the things that have transformed my phone have always been the things that are AI based. That the ability to simply say, I've got 2 seconds to get you to understand what I want you to do, phone, please do it. And the ability for Shlomo to simply be able to interact, not just simply respond, would be a pretty big deal. I think they said they're using ChatGPT, but I can't believe that. They have to be developing their own model. Would you agree?
Yeah, they have a model. In fact, there was some leak that they had a model, and the evidence that they perhaps have 3 different size models depending on whether low latency is important. You get a quick response, but maybe not as full featured. Kind of a small, medium, and large model depending on the task ahead. I think it'll be very interesting. I presume we'll learn all in June at WWDC.
Yeah, I mean, people are saying that Apple has fallen behind in AI. I mean, let's forgetting about the fact that they've been doing like AI visual processing for years and years and years. Like, it's not just because it hasn't been front and center doesn't mean they haven't been doing it. But this could be an advantage for them because I think there was a story last month very recently in which they're actually approaching the New York Times and others to actually appropriately license content to train their AI models with. And yes, they weren't first out of the gate with something like Gemini or ChatGPT or Bard, but they have learned from the mistakes of like maybe the pitchforks and the torches will not be coming for Apple because Apple said, okay, we're going to start we don't know when we're going to start with our large language model, but we're going to make sure that we've appropriately licensed or sourced every single scrap of data that this thing was trained with. And even if it winds up being not quite as muscular, it doesn't have to be as muscular because we're a hardware company. We're not selling this as a service. We're not selling this for programmers as a hosted AI LLM. So we're going to our stakes are lower and our profits are going to be higher for it.
And it's probably worth noting that, as the Financial Times has pointed out, Apple has acquired in the last 6 years 21 AI startups. They may not be in public, but they are not avoiding AI. They're working hard on it.
Apple has a long history of coming out of the gate a little late and then giving it a new name,
right?
Treating it like it's brand new,
right.
like and so this is nothing new for Apple. It's very rare for them to do anything first. They do everything.
They also want to do it on device, and Tim Cook has explicitly used the word responsibly. So they're trying to do their own thing.
Yeah,
I think it's fair.
Also, when photo starts to get generative AI, I'm not talking about, I want a kitty with a hat on that's skateboarding on the Parthenon, but just simple things like, I want my friend Justin to be a little bit more to the left, and I don't want that garbage can to be there. Those are starting to become like table stakes features for photo editing, like in stock photo editors. So I'm keen to see what Apple decides to do with that if and when they decide to do that.
I guess we probably should talk about Apple's response to the Digital Markets Act. I'm going to give you your chance, Alex. But we should first mention that Tim Sweeney says that Apple's plan to... Tim Sweeney, of course, is with Epic. So, okay, consider the source. Apple's plan to thwart Europe's new Digital Markets Act law is a devious new instance of malicious compliance. Apple wants 27% even if you do sell it in an alternative store. That's part one. Mozilla has said it's impossible for Mozilla to do what Apple is offering, which is a version of Mozilla in Europe that uses its own browser engine, but a version of Mozilla everywhere else that uses Apple's WebKit. Is Apple being malicious?
Yeah. I mean, it is. It is. Well, I mean, look, we can call it what we want, but what is clearly happening here is Apple wants to make a construction that, one, fulfills the DMA because they need it to be legal and accepted. Two, reduces the impact on users as much as possible in terms of security issues and platform security issues. And three, minimizes the net over time amount of change that will come to its platform in ways that it doesn't like. And I think that the third one is what Tim Sweeney would probably call malicious compliance, although I think he would also say things that are legitimate security concerns that he'd say, no, they're just being malicious there. But I do think some of how this is structured, it's structured in a way where if you read the letter of the DMA, you can build this thing so that it meets all those concerns, and yet at the same time, nobody will want to participate, which is, I think, ultimately what Apple would like to be the case, is that the some of the terms are onerous enough that Apple's like, well, sure, you could leave the store, you could, but most companies, even Apple said 99% of companies, most companies will look at it and go, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's ultimately, that is what Apple wants.
Sebastian DeWitt is channeling Alex Lindsay, saying the EU is once again solving absolutely no problems and making everything worse in tech.
Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty typical for a government agency. So I mean, these are digital children who don't even use email for the most part, and I'm saying that out of a lot of experience working with them. And so they're just not. They don't have no idea what they're doing. When it comes to these kinds of things, and they're then given people to advise them that are children who don't have any life experience. So the mixture of that is always going to create this problem. so anyway, but the issue is that Apple. Like we hire, I don't know about you, but I hire consultants to make sure that I pay as few taxes as I'm required to pay. Like I want to follow the law
legally.
So all of us want to look at the letter of the law of what does the IRS say that I'm required to do, and how can I set things up so that I minimize those things. And so Apple is looking at what is the what did they write into that law, and what are we required to do, and then how can we do what we want to do inside of that. And so what they're doing is what any company would do, being forced to kind of when people are trying to wedge it, they're not going to go, okay, here, everybody gets flowers. Like everyone's going to, we're now going to give everybody flowers. That's not going to happen. And no company would do that. And I think that I think when we look back at this, I asked my wife what she thought of this whole thing. My wife, uses ChatGPT every day, runs virtual events, not a Luddite. And she was like, what is that? And I said, welcome to 99% of the world. 99% of the Apple users don't even know that this exists. So we get caught up in this bubble of talking about, oh, this is horrible, or oh, this is great. And most of them just don't know or care. They might care a lot more if there's 18 stores that suddenly they have to keep track of. And the chances of the users thinking this is better is pretty low. The chances
and Spotify runs a risk by saying, oh, we'll start a Spotify store. And then your wife saying, I'm not going to put a new store on my phone just to use Spotify. I guess I'll go to Apple Music.
Yeah, and that's and I think that Fortnite found. Epic found this when they left Fortnite. They thought the world would come up and would come to their defenses, and Apple users were like, there's no Fortnite, because they're not Fortnite users. They were like,
well, even on Android, where they did sideloading, it was a massive failure, and they went back to the Play Store.
And the thing that all of these developers miss in this thing is that Apple users, and I think Android users to some degree as well, but Apple users are Apple users. Like there's Apple users, and then there's little apps that they get to put on their computers or on their thing. They're not Fortnite users. They don't care. And what they want is for their environment to be smooth and easy and everything to work. For Apple, beyond the vig that they get for people buying things, I don't update, as an example, I don't up my Apple TV very often. Why? Because I got to do all that fiddly little registrations with my apps. And why do I put off updating my computers? Because I have to reinstall applications. Apple having things get more complicated, actually, it doesn't just affect them on the percentage that they're taking. It affects, how often we want to do new things, and I think that, I think that people are, and this is to Apple's detriment of their own volition, is like when I see a get sign now, even on the iPhone, on the iOS, chances of me clicking on that app is almost zero, and it's far lower than if I see a number. Like if I go for a clock app, let's say, and the one says $3.99 and the other one says get, I'm going to pay $3.99 every single time, because I know get means something weird. There's going to be ads, there's going to be a subscription, there's going to be, and so the thing is that as we create this confusion for the user, they'll buy less things. It just becomes harder, and it doesn't take very much friction for them to go, I don't want to play it anymore. And I think that hurts the user having a more complex environment. It also hurts small developers, because right now the small developers benefit from people just going, oh, that looks like a cool little app, I'll just download it. And I don't have to think about it very much, and everything's really smooth. If it starts to become confusing and frustrating, then people will just not take everything at face value and just buy things because they look like they're interesting. And I think that for the big developers, almost all of this kerfluffle, of course, is for the 2%, probably half of the 2%, that are really upset because they have to pay those big numbers, because 98%, 2.5 million developers do not have to pay this. So they're paying 15% at if they're part of the 2.5 million developers that are under $1 million of revenue. It's 2.5 million versus about 50,000. So there's 50,000, and of those, a handful of them that are thrashing around, doing all of this stuff. Because as a small developer at 15%, been a small developer. I've never been a big developer. I've released lots of little apps over many platforms over the last 20 years. I would never get anywhere close to that $1 million. 15% to manage, to make sure that no one's pirating my software, to manage on all my e-commerce, to allow me to update, to do all those things is a pretty good deal, and so that's not a, so I think that the real problem is that the small developers don't really stand to gain very much from this, and the user doesn't stand to gain very much from that. And that is 99.999% of everyone affected by this. And there's a handful of people that are really upset about it that make a lot of money. This is a rich person's game. This is countries fighting over, this is Henry V fighting over France. This isn't like the average this isn't a legislation that helps the little guy. This is all about big companies trying to make sure that they can make more money, and so I think that's the thing we have to realize is that when we have all of this stuff, number one is most people don't know or care, about this. And number two is the people who are doing this are very big companies who really, like the Netflixes and the Facebooks and the Epics and they're the ones that want to make more money. They don't want to give as much to Apple and so on and so forth. But this is a rich person's game. It's the 1% fighting for more of the 1%. It is not them fighting for no matter what they say. Anybody who says this is for the user or for a small developer is either naive or lying. And so the thing is that it is not for the little guy. It is for the big guys to make more money by making our experience as users worse. Like there is no version of this that I think having multiple things, unless you want to watch porn, there's not a lot of other good things that you're going to get. The average viewer, the average user out there using their iPhone is not going to have a better experience because they cut up the store. Like the other, I think that's the issue.
I think you're right. I do think you're right that Apple's goal here is to retain a certain amount of money from the big fish, right? In the end, that's what this is all about. I think that the bottom line is Tim Sweeney talks a lot about freedom. Tim Sweeney wants all that money he's giving to Apple to keep for himself. That's what he wants. And that's the bottom line here. But I will say this, the fault, when you talk about the law being written by people who don't understand technology, Apple, they did Apple a huge favor here because this is a law that is not about sideloading. This is a law about other gatekeepers, alternate gatekeepers. So I would actually say that from an end user perspective, if you ended up in a situation where it was more like the Mac, that might be beneficial, right? You go to a website using the existing things that they announced last week, which we haven't really talked about, but there's a whole bunch of things that they announced. There's a huge part of iOS 17 that was just beneath the surface until last week. That is a new APIs and all sorts of things, new systems of getting apps approved that work outside the App Store. But a user in a scenario like on the Mac where you could go to a website and there was a developer who had an app and you could tap to install it like you can on other platforms. And it uses Apple's APIs to slide up a sheet that says that we've verified with Apple that this is what it does. And then you can choose to download it and pay them separately and all of that. And they have a system. Well, that I feel like is a thing people understand and it might be reasonable. But that's not what this is. What this is the ability for other deep-pocketed companies to set up alternate app stores that will also take a cut from the developers and that will also approve or disapprove of things that go into the store. And what you will end up with is more gatekeepers. So what the EU's rule has essentially done, because they said you could either do sideloading or more gatekeepers, and Apple was like, oh, well, that's an easy one, because how many more gatekeepers will there really be? So you end up in this situation, which is like, yay, now you could choose to have to beg to be in Tim Sweeney's store or in somebody else's store or in Apple's store. I don't think it's a good deal for most developers, even or users in that scenario.
Well, and I think that the other thing is that you have one of the largest companies in the world and their entire marketing division ready to go. Because starting up a store, even Apple had trouble starting up their own store. And starting up a store is going to be hard. And the first time you make a mistake, you're just going to get ripped along the asphalt. Like it is going to be full on every time someone makes a mistake in their store. Every time there's a security problem, because there will be. Every time that there is all of those things we can say, oh, they're not. There's going to be those problems, and Apple is going to use them as a cudgel to beat everybody into the ground. And so that's going to be the other thing, is that you're opening stores into a very rough environment, which I think Tim Sweeney's ready to do. I think he even got mad at me last week. So I felt like
what did Tim Sweeney say to you?
Gold star.
I said something that, I don't know what I said on Twitter, something that made him upset. I think I said, which is what I've said here on the show before, that if I start seeing people start doing all this outside stuff, I'm going to give them a 1 star, which is what I'm going to do. And he said, that's poison. So anyway, I felt good. I got under his skin. It was good.
What about Steve Troughton-Smith, who I think I respect anyway, on Mastodon, points out that free apps are going to be massively disproportionately affected by Apple's core technology fee, which is why I don't think it'll stand as is. If you have just 2 million users on a completely free app, you're looking at $45,290 monthly to Apple, $500,000 a year. This is based on the calculator that Apple put out, the core technology fee.
Yeah, our friend of the show, James Thompson, who does pCalc, he says that he's got more than 2 million users of pCalc Lite, the free version of his calculator app, in the EU. So he would have, if he opted for that, he would have to pay. I think the counter argument is a free app doesn't necessarily need to take advantage of this. You can stay within the old system, but in a way that proves the point, doesn't it? Which is Apple has made this technology fee the way it is, and the first million is free, but it's a low enough bar that somebody like James can fall into it. So what they're doing is saying you don't want to be elsewhere. You only want to be in our app store, and if you are, then everything is completely free.
What are the chances the EU will see this as malicious compliance?
John Gruber made the point during Fireball last week, and I think it's great. Is this is an app submission, right? This is essentially Apple submitting to the European Commission. I think that please, this is what we want to do. What do you think, sirs?
They may get rejected, huh?
They may get rejected, which is exactly what every app developer goes through with Apple. Is you submit it and you hope that they say yes or no, but you can't check with them up front. You need to actually submit it and see what happens. I do think, look, the technology fee, this 50 cents per user over 1 million per year, and it's not per download or whatever. It's done by, it's the first download on an Apple ID. It's basically per user per year. It hits a lot of free apps that will probably not want to risk going viral. Although I would argue that if you have a free app, presumably you have a business model where you're trying to convert them to paid, and your average revenue per user should probably be more than 50 euro cents per user. But be that as it may, why is it really there? It's really there because, again, it's about the big boys. It's about how many free users Facebook has of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and Messenger. It's about how many free users Spotify has of the Spotify app. That's what Apple's really kind of trying to get with this.
I loved MG Siegler's post at spyglass.org. Apple's deliciously dripping with disdain press release. And he annotates it, and I'll leave this as an exercise for the listener if you want to read it. But MG did a great job on this.
I think that the most interesting thing is that Apple lowered the price for the EU for developers, from 30 to 17 plus 3, I think, so 20 for their own thing. I thought that was interesting that they did it only in the EU and didn't do it for everyone. That to me seemed to even more odd than the whole process.
Not even not even for the iPad. Just as an aside, like
for everything.
Apple said for these new App Store changes for side-loading apps, they said that the EU's ruling was that iOS was a gatekeeper.
Yeah, iPad isn't selling
iPad OS is a gatekeeper. So
but what I'm saying is that iOS, though, if I read it correctly, is that iOS developers now pay if they use the same thing that they were doing before. They're paying 20% instead of 30%. And 13% instead of 15%. Like, I think that's what happened, because it went down to 17 and 10 plus 3 if you use Apple to do the credit card. So it's actually, so if you stay in the store, there's a little bit of a step towards, and this is to Andy's point, that all of these conversations continue to benefit everybody because those prices are going down. The 15% that everyone gets under $1 million because of this. But it looks like Apple pushed this down, sweetened the pot even more for EU developers to be part of that. What I was surprised at is that they didn't just sweeten the pot for everybody, and maybe they will. I think that's unsustainable that they don't end up dropping it. So what's going to end up happening is that if you use Apple the way you use it right now as a developer, it's going to be 13 and 20, not 15 and 30. That's what it feels like. It is from that press release. And so it'll be interesting to see, what this looks like. The other thing is that if the EU doesn't agree with what Apple did, what is the process of adjudication? Like, so if they don't agree with it, how long? The question is, how long? Is it something that they can go, well, we're going to now penalize you a month later, or does it have to sit in EU courts to argue about this for the next 2 years? Like, did Apple get something close enough that they just drag it out, for another 2 years? Which is, I just don't, and I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know how the EU works. It's a mystery.
I just, I agree with, oddly enough, I agree with like more than half of what you're saying, Alex. I think the only thing that I would add is that like, when we talk about this is not necessarily about small developers. This, of course, is about people who have the ability to make noise for Apple against Apple and get the EU and other regulators to actually take action on this. However, so long as we include Apple as one of the huge corporations that's just out to protect its own money, because and undermining the usability of a device or service as a result. Because it's been years, but every single time I have to leave the Kindle app to go buy a comic book, that just kills me. Every time I have to leave an app to do something, all because like Apple's decided that we deserve 27% at least of that copy of Amazing Spider-Man. That's not a user positive thing, and I don't think Apple can make the case that they have earned that big of a cut. The only other thing I would say is that I don't think this would ever result in a true competitive app store environment where I don't think that if I were to create my own app store in which I create the better terms for developers, I think that it might turn into that net positive for small developers that we're all hoping for. But I think that as you said, no one's going to want to sign up for Andy's App Store just because, even though they're spending the exact same money for these apps. So I agree with you there. But nonetheless, a lot of the people who are corporations that are pushing for this are doing so because they feel, look, we're Microsoft. We've created what we think is one of the greatest games app stores ever. Like why should we have to sell through someone else's app store when our main business is this wonderful games app store that we think is specifically fine-tuned for gaming and specifically fine-tuned for our Xbox customers or for the titles that we develop. So I just think there's some balance to be seen there, but I agree that's mostly Godzilla versus King Kong.
Well, and I also think that for Microsoft, I would say because you gave up on the phone, you gave up on the platform, and the cost is that somebody else owns the rails, and so the thing is, and to say that, that Apple doesn't deserve any money. That's basically, I agree with that. Yeah. So the thing is to say that they don't deserve any money for the fact that you're using their hardware for this. Because people say, well, we add value. Again, what Fortnite proved was that they don't really add as much value as they think, because if they took their app away, the app user, the users would just go, well, they're not there anymore. I'll go somewhere else. And so the thing is that's the problem is that for an Apple user, the primary value to them is the environment, and the environment staying the way it is. For a small developer, again, as I said, if going out to some other platform would probably be pretty rough. Even if you got a better number, the number of sales, would be much lower than you had there. 15% is not that bad, especially 13% is not that bad for all the things that you get inside of that environment. So the chances of them going, so this is not a fight that's going to affect them. And I think that again, where the pitchforks and where the pitchforks and the torches are going to start pulling up is when Netflix goes, you can only download our app as a separate thing. And if they do that in Europe, it'll never get to the US. That's the whole thing, is that because that will give Apple what it needs, which is that, hey, we're only going to release this outside of the app, because what that does is it takes choice away. As a user, I already got Netflix on my phone. So you're taking something away. You're forcing me to go outside of the environment that I already paid for to go do something. That's where I think that it really becomes a user problem, is when I have to go out of the secure, comfortable, easy to use environment as a user to have something that I already had. It's essentially taking that away from me. And I don't want to necessarily, and I think a lot of users aren't going to want to give it up, and they're going to be frustrated. And frustration by itself doesn't cause a lot of, can be just people just get frustrated by things. I get frustrated by a lot of things, except when you have people like me and other people who will focus those torches and pitchforks. That's when things become more uncomfortable, because it doesn't take millions. It takes 10,000 willing to cause trouble. Like it doesn't, it really takes 10,000 willing to rumble to rip up stores and cause all kinds of trouble. So if they actually do that, you don't have to get a lot of people to damage the stuff. It's
really sad that you want to do that. That's just pathetic.
Oh, I will.
It's vandalism. It's ridiculous.
You're there with a can of soup. You're ready to throw that can of soup right at the Mona Lisa.
Go
man.
right ahead, Alex. That's just BS. That's the ultimate BS. Yeah. And I really wish you wouldn't advocate that, at least not on our shows. I think that's appalling. That's such bad behavior.
I view it as a user. I view it as an existential threat to the way I like to have my life.
No, it's not a threat. Do whatever you want, but don't do that. Again, what do you think about? Let's change the subject. What do you think about what Mozilla is saying? Would we not, as users, love to be able to use alternative browsers on iOS that aren't really just reskinned Safari?
I don't really care, but sure.
Well,
it doesn't really. I don't. Yeah. I use the whatever I use. I mean, I don't really. I think browsers aren't that important to me. I think is the problem. It's just a browser. So I don't really care whether Mozilla is up there or anything else. I mean, I use on the Mac. I use Safari or.
Do you use ad blocking or any privacy controls on your browser?
No, not really.
That's what
I just don't go anywhere I care about. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to, you can't. Unless, eventually I would love to see them support privacy first browsers like Brave, or if you want to use Chromium, or Firefox if you want to use their engine. Mozilla, I'm sure, will not do a U version of their browser. They say it's just untenable. We can't. They say their browser rules, Apple's new browser rules, are as painful as possible for Firefox.
Yeah. See, that's why we getting back to the original question. I mean, I think that the EU was hoping to create competition and diversity. Unfortunately, the rules that they created only ask for compliance. And I mean, Gruber's take on it is very fun. Like, okay, we don't think that you've actually regulated what we didn't want you to regulate. We found a way to sort of slip under the door a version that is so painful that it will in effect be maintain the status quo. But yeah, so Apple is going for compliance as opposed to let us create a diverse ecosystem of competition and free marketplace that the EU is so much in love with. And I think that they did it in a very, very petty way.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan, by the way. I mean, EU has done plenty of stupid things. The browser cookies is kind of the perfect example, that silly banner that every website has to put up of a ridiculous regulation that has not enhanced anything in any way.
I will quickly disagree, only in the sense that I kind of train myself to, when that comes up, you know what, I will click the button and say, please. The default is set to turn everything off. And I feel as though once I've trained myself to do that, it takes 1 second. I don't really notice it anymore. And I choose to do that. And so that's fine. Yeah. But I agree that people who don't care or don't think about that, that's an extra step they have to do. And that could be super annoying. But I'm glad that regulation exists. Again, it's one of those things that would not happen if regulation did not create the importance for that to happen.
And I will say, I agree with Andy. I when it came out, I was like this, because it was a real problem for a lot of us doing work on the web. But the GDPR stuff has, I think part of it was also showing sites that were sharing my data that I didn't think, like a government site like PG&E. Can we share your data for and I was like, PG&E selling my data? Really, guys? And so I think that there's the flow definitely, and I do the same thing that Andy does. I just turn everything off. I hit reject, and then I make some pretty hard decisions about websites that make it hard for me to reject their cookies. And you kind of feel like they're user forward when they just let you hit reject all right at the very front, and they're user antagonistic when they make it.
Well, there's an argument for you having Chrome on your Apple device, because Chrome, in fact, will soon no longer support third-party cookies.
Yeah, I guess it's just not. I guess on my, I don't I guess I don't use my iPhone very much for surfing,
for browsing.
So I don't. I think it's just not a use case that I use very much. So I don't care.
Yeah.
It's not it's not a very good viewing experience. So if I need to go look at something on the web, I go back to my computer and I jump on.
Well, even the
and
iPad
look at
would benefit, I think, from having third-party browser engines.
I mean, because mobile browsing is just such a sewer. I mean, for whatever reason, I've been doing a lot more like reading, like on my phone, and again, I famously have Android, but I have this accessibility feature turned on that I can't remember where I read about, but thank God I read about it, where it puts this floating button, this little floating button on the top of the screen that's everywhere, that's designed to make everything on the screen more readable. So you tap the button and it will put it to simple one scroll of text with big white on black text. But for me, it's like it turns a news item on a news page from, I've got this tiny, tiny little stripe of 4 lines of text with a moving video of something on below it and a huge ad on top of it. And every time I scroll two panes, I get a new ad that covers up something that has to be dismissed. But if I tap this one floating button, suddenly it becomes just 800 words of plain text to read. And if there were like if Apple ever really opened up for alternative browsers, and there was an alternative browser engine that basically had for use on the phone the primary idea of, we will try to reject everything we can possibly reject that is not content. It would be terrible for sites that rely on advertising. I'm very, very sorry about that. But that's the only time that I would ever enable it is when I can't read this thing because there is too much advertising on the page.
Well, and yeah, to agree with you, my browser for news is Apple News and Flipboard are the two that I have that I use the most. And I don't like, I think it's to Andy's point, I don't really consider the web on a mobile phone to be a browsable, like to something that I would do, because it's just so painful to try to read anything there. It's hard to look at people's products, on there, let alone anything else. And so usually on my phone, if I find something interesting, I'm immediately going to go to a desktop, to figure it out. And a lot of it has to do with cutting and pasting and clicking and all those things. So on an iPad, I don't find it particularly fun either, because selecting text is still a problem. just getting things quickly is not as good as a mouse. And so I think that's also part of it.
Oh, Alex, you should switch to Android. You just swipe up. and then you have a system level tool that says select stuff on the page and will automatically select things by touch. It's a wonderland, Alex.
By the way, Gruber has now just published his, I would say about 2,000 word review. I'm sure you were reading this during the conversation, Jason.
I'm reading it right now. Yeah.
One thing he said that no one else has said: the speakers are simply amazing. He says they're better, far better than the AirPod Pro or Max or any headphones he's ever worn. Which I have. That's an interesting. That might be a killer app. He also says, and I think this is really important, I have also suffered neither physical discomfort nor nausea in long sessions. So there's that.
Go figure.
Did not make him throw up.
He can wear it for a couple hours, he says.
Yeah, he wore it for 3 hours. He says the battery life is good, is very good. There's a lot more to it, of course, but he has had it for 6 days, like the other early reviewers.
So where do we go? I mean, I guess we wait to see if the EU.
The EU's got to respond to this, right? They're not going to just
agrees or disagrees with what is going on here.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Let's change the subject, shall we? We have a fine panel. Alex Lindsay from OfficeHours.global, WGBH's Andy Ihnatko, who is imminently going to release his newly updated and beautiful. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. That's mean. That's like taunting Detroit Lions fans. I'm mean today. And from
no, you're encouraging me. That's good.
It's encouragement. It's friendly encouragement. And from the San Francisco Bay Area, where we are in fact celebrating today, it's Jason Snell.
That's right. I am I don't know what. I'm not the Joe Montana. Let's do modern. I'm kind of a
Jeff Garcia. I think you're the Jeff Garcia.
I'm a Kyle Juszczyk, or maybe I'm not a Debo. I'm not a Debo.
You could be an Ayuk.
Maybe I'm one of the weapons, but Leo has so many weapons.
So many weapons.
So many weapons.
And me, I mean, after all, it's pretty clear that I'm just a system player, and that's all that I'm good for.
It's okay.
Let's see. What else?
Yeah. That's what. Way to be humble, saying you're the Brock Purdy of the show. Way to be humble.
You know, I bought for Christmas. I bought Lisa a Brock Purdy poster signed, and I said, your poster just got a lot more valuable today. I was very happy for her.
Well, if it was signed by Brock Purdy, yes.
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't signed by Brock
at all.
Purdy. I didn't mean to imply that. I signed it. No, he signed it. I think he signed it. I hope he signed it. You never know these days, do you?
You never know.
You never know. Oh, funny. Okay, that was our pause, by the way. Stick an ad in there. Okay, thank you. And take that part out where I say stick an ad in there. Because on video, there's no ad to be stuck. So we don't want to tell anybody that there would be an ad here if there isn't an ad.
Well, they wouldn't see ad over regardless. Yeah.
Right, so just...
This never happened. None of this ever happened.
Why need that Men in Black thing that they do? What are they going to neuralize?
No, Leo. That's a dangerous tool.
Meta, by the way, just parenthetically, Meta says, "Welcome, Apple," and seriously, and we plan to be the Android of VR headsets, which they kind of are. They're the low cost leader now.
And that's good for both Apple and Meta.
It's very good for Meta. I mean, it establishes the category, right?
Yeah, it establishes the category. There'll be a lot of developers that are jumping into it, and they are going to come in under that price for a long time. What Apple did is create actually a huge window under $3,500 that is acceptable. So Meta putting out a $1,500 headset or $1,000 headset. I bought, I got a Meta 2 for $250. There's a lot of things that people can do that are less expensive that Meta is going to be able to do, put in there. And maybe it also gives Meta, who's done a lot of R&D in this area, the kind of the okay, like if Meta went out and said, we're going to charge $3,000 for a headset, I think a lot of people would have been like, that's crazy and you can't do that. And Apple has established that market. And so I think Meta come in with a more expensive headset, as well as capitalizing on the less expensive ones, I think is good. And I think that it'll also, the more expensive headsets just mean we'll have a lot more resolution and frame rate. Because, I think Meta's done really well. At $250, what you can get with a Meta 2, and at $650, what you get with a Meta 3 is pretty impressive. Yeah. But it's a lot better if you have more money to have more processing.
It's just pretty cool that you can say, okay, 35. I don't want the whole wheel of cheese. Like, could you slice off just be able to watch movies on a big screen without having a big screen in front of me, and the real good gaming? How much would that cost? Oh, that's about a quarter pound. There you go, $500.
And I've been playing with Supernatural, which is that it's this boxing game that you can play on the Meta, and man, I got to tell you, it's a good workout.
They bought that company. They liked it so much. They bought the company.
It's a really good workout, and you just try. Like I did the low intensity, and I was like, "Wow, that's a workout." And I was like, "This is low intensity. Like, what is medium and high is like death, on the thing." And so I think that there's a lot of utilization that can be done at a lower cost as well. So I think that it's going to be good for both markets. And as a person who generates content for these headsets, be a great time.
Do you mind that they get a little sweaty when you work out in them, and they're like that? It's kind of a gross.
So there's a rubber. I do them right in the office, right behind here. If I didn't need to take a break, there's a rubber piece that now comes with the Meta Quest, the Quest. So this is a rubber thing that goes over the soft area. So if you're going to work out, you put the rubber thing over it.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, it doesn't really affect the. It doesn't lower the experience of using it, but it does increase the length of time you want to use it before it gets really smelly. Because it's a good rubber. You can take it off, wash it, put it back on. So it works well.
Good news for the Apple Card. Actually, I don't know if this is good news or not. I don't have any metric with which to judge this. Apple Card has 12 million users, according to Apple. They finally released a press release that tells us how many, with $1 billion in cash back paid last year. Of the 12 million customers, 30% use the card actively. That is, making 2 or more payments a month. I am definitely one of them. I pay with Apple Card for everything now. Maybe Apple's touting these numbers because they are right now shopping the card. Goldman Sachs wants to get out of it, and Apple's looking for somebody to buy it. So maybe that's, although in the press release, Goldman Sachs says, we're committed to continuing to deliver an excellent experience for Apple Card customers. Yeah, well, okay. If you say so.
Well, they're still under contract.
They have to.
So,
they're committed.
They're stuck with it until
legally.
Apple doesn't want someone complaining about it. So
right.
So they've said we're looking for somebody else, but Goldman Sachs is still stuck in a two or three more years on the contract, whether they like it or not. So they can hope that them making it hard for Apple is not going to improve Apple's ability to move away.
No point in complaining.
Yeah.
And of course, Apple says Apple Card is helping 12 million cardholders live healthier financial lives. So good on you. Spend more money. It's just convenient. That's the thing. But this is a really good use for the Apple Watch, by the way. And now that everywhere I go, you can pay with we were at Benihana for Lisa's birthday yesterday, and I paid for it with the watch. It's like it's free.
Yeah.
You don't even
I don't
notice.
Yeah, I think that just the Apple Pay in general, like you just get so used to it, and being able to pay with your watch, with your phone, whether it's with the Apple Pay or not, with the card or not, it is so convenient that I pay for stuff at the farmer's market with it. Like everybody's got like
Everybody has it.
Everyone's got a Square or something that they can take your payment. And I only feel bad about the poor folks that are like busking on the street because no one has any cash anymore. Like and I've seen some. I saw one on Saturday in Petaluma. We were walking around Petaluma on Saturday, and there was a guy with Venmo. Like he's like, but I looked at it, and I was like,
they all have Venmo now.
I don't have Venmo. I was like, I don't know how Venmo works, and so I was like, if you put Apple Pay up there, I can.
I'm counting this. I used the Apple Card 8 times yesterday because we went down to San Francisco. We did the tourist thing. I used it 8 times yesterday, everywhere, for parking, to buy coffee, to buy a San Francisco 49ers NFC championship hat. Incredible.
You used near field communication. So use the NFC to buy the NFC championship thing. I think that makes you the NFC champion.
I am the NFC champion. I'd like to.
There's an ad in there somewhere.
Yeah.
There's an ad. There's a Super Bowl ad for you. The true NFC champion.
Anyway, I'm sorry that Goldman Sachs isn't happy, but I think Apple really has made tap to pay, at least in the U.S. I think it was already big in the EU, but it's really made tap to pay happen in the U.S. I think
part of it is that Goldman Sachs isn't making any money on it, so they're not happy with it.
That's
why. Turns out, if you make it great for the users use it all the time.
Right.
So so while hasn't been profitable for Goldman Sachs, it makes everybody want to use it more. And be very comfortable with it. So I think Apple's got that part down. They just have to figure out the profitability part of it.
New CarPlay will debut this year. Car keys and CarPlay, a smarter ride from start to finish. And Jason, you were saying there was a lot of stuff that's starting to come out in 17.4. One of these is some updates to CarPlay, I think. Yes.
Yeah, most of it's the EU stuff, but they are also rolling out that next gen CarPlay because they're going to start being cars that support the next gen CarPlay, which is talking to the car's central computer and showing live data and letting them, providing themes so that the cars can be themed by the car maker. So that's good. The new iOS version that just shipped adds the shared playlist editing thing, and they've got that road trip in your car CarPlay shared queue thing going on. There have been a bunch of those kind of things going on in the Apple Music app that we've seen a lot of. But yeah, the new CarPlay stuff is in there.
Is there anybody with that long? Leo was just showing that the long. Is there anyone with that putting that into their car?
Alfa Romeo is going to do it.
Yeah,
and I think
fancy
Porsche
ones are
is going to
doing
do
it.
it.
Yeah.
The fancy ones are going to do it. But I'm sure they'll customize it thoroughly, right? But the fact that CarPlay then has, that speedometer is CarPlay, not your car. The CarPlay has access to that information.
The car has its own version. It has their own version, but if you plug it in, your phone takes over. And I think that's a pretty, for Apple, again, 220 million people buying Apple.
It's a big victory.
It's a pretty, most of these cars are not selling $220 million cars. Alfa Romeo, if they sell more than a couple million a year, I think they'd be
they probably sell hundreds of thousands. So one of the advantages of it, of course, is that Apple updates its technology yearly. Cars do not get updated yearly. So you can really have the latest thing. So I recently bought my Mustang Mach-E lease ran out, and I got a new BMW i5, which supports CarPlay and Android Auto. But BMW really wants you to use their nav, for instance. Like, they don't let CarPlay take over the driver's console, and their nav will show you charging stations. They don't use the CarPlay, the Apple Map features for that.
Yeah.
And so you tend to be kind of in this weird hybrid world where in fact, they even have their own voice assistant, and you can tell the car's voice assistant, you can literally say, "Hey, I'm cold," and it will turn on the heat warmer, the steering wheel warmer, and turn up the heat. But you can't get CarPlay to do that. But I guess in these cars that support it fully, you will be able to.
Yeah,
I think BMW, which was an early supporter of CarKey, still doesn't want to give up the dominance of the console. That's important.
So
to
there's
them.
two things. So CarKey is different. So CarKey is the NFC-based car.
And that works great, by the way. I love CarKey.
That's really good.
So reliable. It's so good.
Yeah. And the CarPlay Next Gen, whatever you want to call it, it really is this thing where Apple's working more closely with car vendors to use their flat screen, their LCD screens throughout the vehicle. And this is one of the challenges, is that CarPlay, old classic CarPlay, does not have access to vehicle data.
Right.
They don't talk to the car. So they can be in a little window, but then the other LCD screen that's your dash is whatever your car maker wants it to be. And so this new technology will talk to the real-time data from the car and display it in real time, and it allows the themes to match whatever the car maker wants to do and have it feel more like their car instead of like Apple. And this is Apple's way of not having to build a real-time car base level operating system and get people to license it, because they want this to be more universal than that. And I think Apple saw where it was going, where the CarPlay was a great idea, but if you don't update it, it's going to be just a little phone projection in a box amid all of these other things that are being run by the car maker software. And I think that's Apple's ultimate goal here, is to just have it be that the car maker feels comfortable that the user is getting their phone stuff and the car stuff in one place, and yet it's also playing nicely with their car. Now, some car makers are going to be like, no, we finally got Apple in a box. I want to keep them in the box, or even kick them out of the box and have no box, like General Motors. But I do think that there's going to be an appeal among a lot of car makers to sort of embrace the fact that their users have iPhones and actually want to have that data. And it's a big step for Apple to be able to show you speedometer data, for example, because they just can't do that now. And they can't, they can tell you how fast you're going based on GPS and stuff, but legally the car has to be showing you real-time data, and Apple needs to be able to display that using CarPlay.
Well, and also the Apple, there's a version of this that could be the real-time data, but collecting all that data and giving it back to you. Like, this is your average speed. This is your this is, and analyzing all that data is something that eventually it could do as well. I think the real thing between Apple and all these car manufacturers is deciding whether people are car people or whether they're Apple people. And there are a mixture of both. So if they really want a BMW or they really want a GM car, they're going to buy the car and they're going to say, well, I don't need Apple CarPlay. Like Tesla oftentimes wins that battle. People buy a Tesla even though it won't really support CarPlay. And so they, Tesla wins that one. Will GM win it? I'm not sure. I don't know if there's a lot of people like, oh, I really have to have a GM car over top of another competitor that will match up with my phone more effectively. And I think that's the question. It depends on, Alfa Romero, little company, and so
Porsche,
so they,
not so little.
They benefit.
Porsche's a big one.
Right. But I'm just saying, but both of them are niche products, so they benefit by Apple users going, oh, this is great. And I want to have this as part of my thing. GM, wants to turn this into a profit center, so let's be clear, they want to have a whole bunch of things. And so they want to charge you $129 a year for a car that, because right now they're only getting whatever you lease it for. They want a little bit more. They want to make a little bit more money. So giving that up is not something they want. And they want to control that space. I think some of them are probably concerned that Apple eventually, someday, maybe in a decade, will come out with a car. And all this data is super useful to Apple, figuring out how to make it all work well and do all those things. So it's going to be, it'll be interesting to see, but I think they really are playing against, is the user an Apple user or a person that really has to have a Corvette or really has to have, this is their model, and so I think that's the question usually of where it's going to matter.
Yeah, it's also going to be, it's an interesting bit of financial politics going on because car makers are making a huge amount of money off of driver data. There's been, the last time I looked into it was a few months ago, and I think that analysts have been speculating that the market for that data is going to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars in the next 5 years. So no automaker wants to allow Apple's privacy policies to overlay whatever they want to monetize it from. They also don't want to hand that opportunity over to Google so that they can monetize it. So there's going to be some interesting balancing acts between we know that our customers want Android Auto and they want CarPlay. However, we want to get the benefit of them without losing any money off of it. And it also makes me think that I would love to see if I know there are a lot of car guys inside of Apple. Like imagine if they did something like Health Kit only with cars, with all the data that CarPlay is collecting, so they can figure out that, okay, your fuel efficiency was this, or your e-vehicle range was this. Here's where you kind of screwed up, and here's how you can sort of improve your next time. Or even, okay, according to you, as part of a pain in the health app is you spent a lot of your driving less than 2 miles, and here are a bunch of routes that you drive a lot that don't involve a huge change in elevation, and according to what we know from Apple Maps, has sidewalks and great places to bike or walk. It'd be interesting, given that Apple's best and I want to say worse, but less best thing is how it tries to make sure that you are in an Apple world and that everything you do with Apple software and hardware benefits you even if you're not using that same screen in front of you. The idea that it could have an eye on what I'm doing while I'm driving and use that as a way to improve my health or improve productivity or make my desktop experience better. I really wish that I really think that Apple could do some interesting things by leveraging that.
All right, let's take a little time out, a breath. Although I think, Andy, one of the things you were talking about was this Mozilla Foundation report from September, which called Cars a Privacy Nightmare on Wheels.
Yeah.
It really is pretty amazing how much data cars collect. It's like Roku, yeah. Yeah, if you want to read it, that's a good thing to read. I'll just put in one more plug for CarKeys, if your car supports it. I realized that, so I have a fob for my car, like any normal human. I also have an app for the car, but I also have my key in my Apple Wallet. And I just sent it to Lisa. I said, yeah, here's the key if you want to take the car. It's amazing. And unlike the Ford phone as a key thing, which I had for 3 years with the Ford Mustang Mach-E, this thing works every single time. It's really reliable. It's very, very reliable.
Keys as a service is one of the most transformative things to something that we've been using in our civilization for hundreds and hundreds of years. The idea that you can give your kid not the keys to the car, but permission to use the car between the hours of 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. only if you're activating the key in the certain geopin location, which is between the school and your house, and it expires every week or every day. That is transformative. Just like the smart lock on my door, where it's like, I have visitors come over and I trust them, but I just can't duplicate a key and mail it to them. I can simply say, next time Alex comes over, I can say, oh, if I'm out of the house, here's a digital key, just let yourself in. That's again, a door lock is fundamental human technology, and the idea of giving people not just unlimited access by giving them a key, but I'm giving you conditional access. That's
cool.
That's a good concept. Yeah, that's a power expanding thing.
All right, picks of the week coming up next. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Let's kick off our picks of the week with Alex Lindsay. Your pick, my friend.
So we had a great session with Michael Cioni last week on Office Hours about this new tech called Strata.Tech. So that's the website is Strata.Tech or Strata. Michael Cioni comes out of Adobe, and before that, Frame.io. He came to Adobe through Frame.io, and before that, he's worked for Panavision and lots of other ones. He's been part of these pipelines for a long time and really looked at what is the pipeline of building production, doing production. And what he's really looking at is using AI as instead of generative AI, this is really what he's calling utility AI, which is, it just makes a lot of things easier. And so a couple of the things that he showed in our show last week was the ability, and by the way, they're doing the announcement Thursday. So this is the embargo ended this morning, but we got a little preview of it last week. And so, but this is, the software basically lets you, if you're a producer, upload a whole bunch of videos, for instance, with a whole bunch of time code. It'll lay all that time code over top of each other. You can see how they all line up. You can make choices of what you're looking at. It'll even analyze this is in the cloud. It'll analyze all your footage and say, show me the part where the woman is in the kitchen talking. And it's just going to show you that section,
And that's AI doing that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's analyzing all the frames and allowing you to say, he's looking at all of the, adding AI to these. And again, not AI that's going to generate something, but take a look at all the things that are happening in a scene or in the production, and how do we make those things easier for the user? So grab all that data. Imagine looking at all your footage, generating all that metadata, and then delivering it back to your editing tool.
Yeah, that's from Office Hours. STRADA.tech.
Yeah, right? And yeah, absolutely. Yep. And he's one of the smartest guys in the industry. I mean, and one of the we could have done that for 2 hours watching him talk, but it's a really easy, he's a really easy person to listen to. But this is going to be coming out again. They're going to be doing a launch on, I think it's Thursday morning, and where they really show more of this, but it's, and the other thing that he's doing is he's really showing how on their YouTube page, because they didn't have anything else to shoot, because they were still working on the product. They're talking about how there is a lot of other great content, how they're building up their company from scratch. He's got a little bit of funding, so it's talking about that process. Really, really great YouTube site. But I think it's going to be something that a lot of us are going to be talking about, a year from now. And this is, I remember, you see these little things pop out, and you're like, okay, that was a good idea. So anyway, so Strata.tech is, and I would take a look at the website, take a look at what I think they're going to release something on Thursday.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I want to mention is that we had, I just was super excited. We had Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket on our show yesterday. And it was probably one of the best office hours we've done. Like, he played some Toad songs. He played a Toad song. He played one of his own songs, and he covered Peter Gabriel's Mercy, which in my opinion is better than the original.
From his studio too, which is cool. This is so cool.
And he's just so like him talking about the industry, talking about his journey, talking about, how he approaches everything it was a pretty amazing hour. So
you could take me down if I play a little bit of this.
No. Like, PJ Harvey records where it's like a drum, not even a drum set, a bass, and
so he gets out his guitar,
bigger than any. How
fun! OfficeHours.global. I don't even know what Toad the Wet Sprocket is, but I can see Jason Snell's eyes.
It's a great 90s band. I love them. I've definitely seen them many times live. Yeah.
And I want to see whatever this is, Captain Disillusion's graphics breakdown. I don't know what that thumbnail is, but that is wild.
Yeah, he Captain Disillusion is a really big YouTuber, and we looked at some of his videos. We have a couple issues with that video, so we'll see if it comes back up again. Nothing like playing somebody else's video a lot to talk about it. So anyway, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
This is like the Kiss of YouTubers, right? This is his makeup.
The funny thing is, I guess the story behind his face is that he decided he wanted to be a superhero, so he started painting his face. He found this paint that he thought would be great, and as he got up to his eyes, he was like, this is going to be a real mess to take this out of my eyebrows and eyelashes and everything else.
Stopped.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, and we're done. So
I love
a three.
Yeah, I love his videos, particularly like when he shows a faked YouTube. Hey, wow, look, I just hit this 3-pointer from halfway the side of the moon, and he not just debunks it, but also shows how it's done and other things to look for. And so great videos, but I honestly, I can't get over the makeup. It's like as I'm watching, I'm just sort of, I don't understand what this makeup is about. It makes no sense to me. I don't know why he's wearing it, and it's making my brain like resist watching this.
Yeah, but it's certainly you know who he is, right? I mean, there's no.
Yeah, it makes it really clear of who he is when you see his. Anytime you see a thumbnail of him, you go like, oh, that's one of
Captain,
his. I will say his new one on Shutter Speed. Which is up at the top there, is probably the best explanation of I've had to explain shutter speed a lot, and this is the best explanation of shutter speed and why it's important, and rolling shutters and global shutters and everything else. And I think it's actually pretty entertaining, and I think that as an educator, it's definitely worth us tracking people like him because he's really creative and exceptionally good at what he does as far as adding graphics and little bits and pieces. Nothing super complicated. There's no really hard things that he does here, but they're.
What's his background?
I think he was an Avid editor before that. Like, I mean, he comes from the industry. He's not
right.
But he's done pretty well because he's pretty good at what he does.
Yeah, 2.5 million subs.
Yeah.
And it's all because of the face paint. Let's be honest, Andy. You should consider it.
Yeah. I think the face paint makes it easier to find. I'm going to do it. Here's the thing is I'm going to come in with Vision Pro. I'm going to figure out how to come in over Vision Pro with the silver.
Okay.
With the silver.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing. That channel really rebounded after Buddy Ibsen had to quit after the third video because of
the aluminum poisoning.
The aluminum oxide.
Yeah, terrible story. That is officehours.global. And that is where Alex lives day and night. And they break down the graphics. Actually, that would be interesting to see how he does that and so forth. That'd be very interesting. Andy Anako, pick of the week.
My pick of the week is Prompt 3. It's a new but not quite new terminal app for the Mac, made by Panic Software, which is how it got my immediate and interested attention. They've had a terminal app for iOS for a long time. I actually had it installed for a while, but they just recently updated to Prompt 3, and now it also includes a Mac client. So the same annual subscription, will get you both apps. I like it because I'm not like a terminal ninja. I'm not like an SSH guy. I don't spend all this time like in terminals and SSHing into stuff. However, I do have like machines on my network and machines I have to deal with where I do have to I do have to terminal in just to handle a couple of maintenance things, like to do an rsync, to do a backup, to little maintenance, check user logs, things like that. I like Prompt 3 on the Mac because number one, it syncs all of your logins and all your settings like between all instances of Prompt on mobile and on the desktop. So I no longer have to like go when I'm using the built-in terminal app on Mac. I basically have to remember, what's the what's this? Okay, what's the login here? And I need to have this set to 80 columns or whatever. But the other thing is that, again, I'm not a command line ninja. There's stuff that I kind of remember, but when it comes to like the rsync command to like get things from one server to like a backup drive on another server someplace else, it's something where I have to go into like a notes app and basically take that long command line thing and copy and paste it in. Prompt 3 basically lets you essentially create little cheats like that. So I know that's not unique to terminals. However, I think that they do it in a very user-friendly sort of way. The only problem, there are a lot of really great terminal apps out there. iTerm 2 is one that like a lot of people who do spend lots of time in the terminal will use when they're using it to remote into other places. However, it's designed for the typical audience for a terminal app. So it really is for people, I need to have like 4 panes inside each window, and I need to support this standard that I've never heard of, and all these other little things that if you grew up in Unix, then these are like table stakes for anything. For me, however, Prompt 3 is the one for the person who has a need to SSH into other places, but never really has to spend so much time that it becomes by rote, or where they prefer to type things in or have key bindings for everything. So it's good stuff. It's a 7-day free trial. I think I can't remember whether the annual fee is $10 or $20 a year, but one's license will get you both apps, both a mobile app, iOS, iPad, and desktop. And if you are just looking for iPad-based apps, I don't know if you can do better than Prompt 3, than the original Prompt. I did get that installed because there are times when I'm traveling and I need to get back into, again, my office to do whatever. Oftentimes just to turn on a remote access feature that I did not leave on the desktop. And so worth looking at. 7-day free trial. You can rock and roll for the whole thing. And
$20 a year for the annual. You could buy it one time only for $99.99. But there are a lot of free terminal apps available on the Macs. Like I use Kitty now, but I used iTerm too for a long time. And of course, Apple gives you a terminal app with the Mac. Now it's a little bit different on iOS, and so it's nice to have something. I use Blink, I think, on iOS, but that's not free either. I don't think there's anything free on iOS. Maybe there is. Panic. We like to support them anyway. Prompt.
Very much so.
3. Jason Snell, pick of the week.
This is going to be, I'm cheating a little bit here because I wasn't feeling super moved about anything this week. But hey, later this week is going to be a big day. We all know it. We've all been thinking about it. Yeah, that's right. February 1st, Apple's going to release their quarterly results. Who is excited for
color chart time?
Financial data mandated by the government. Woo! And then the next day the Vision Pro comes out, whatever. Anyway, I had a realization the other week. I was doing the MIT mystery hunt with a bunch of friends. Very fun, solving puzzles. Everything happens in Google Sheets or a spreadsheet. You're solving things, and I had a moment of realization. I opened Excel to do something. I've used Excel for longer than half the people who watch this show have been alive. I realized I am now a foreigner in the land of Excel. That I have used Numbers and Google Sheets so much that Excel is actually kind of frustrating and baffling the way it does things, and it does things in a certain way that hasn't changed, because that's actually the virtue of Excel. Is the way you learned it in 1995 is still pretty much what it does, and I'm not mocking it. Right. Continuity is incredibly important with that stuff, but what I discovered is I have gravitated toward using other tools. Google Sheets for collaborations, Numbers for charting and kind of like simple basic kind of stuff, to the point now where Excel is the third of 3 spreadsheets I turn to, and I realized I don't want to use it anymore. So this pick is Numbers because I do all my charts in Numbers, which comes with my Mac and my iPad and my iPhone, but I mostly use it on the Mac. It has all the calculations. It has beautiful charts that are better than anything I can get out of Excel. It is a legitimately great spreadsheet app, and we don't, I think, give Apple enough credit for having done a great job with Keynote and Numbers, and I suppose Pages. I don't use Pages, but I'm sure people love it too. But I can say that with all of the work that I've done on all the 6 colors spreadsheets that I do for Apple financial charts and data, which I'll be doing again in a couple of days, I use Numbers. It does incredibly well, and it has taken me to the point that I don't think I need to be a Microsoft customer anymore, which I kind of hard to believe because they built up so much muscle memory in me over decades. But even Excel, the one that I still think in Excel for so many different things, I think I've reached the point now where I have better options with Google Sheets and with Numbers. I don't need to turn to Excel. And so I don't. So Numbers, I know this is kind of an anti-pick almost, but like I use it. It's good. If you have a Mac, you have it. Use it.
It's all I use. I mean, I use Sheets when I need to collaborate with other people.
Yeah.
And then usually I build it in Numbers because it's way faster to build in Numbers than Sheets, and then import it via XLS. The only reason I use, is like import it in there to get it back in there. But the big thing for me with Numbers is white space. Like I don't have to have all those cells that I just move. I have a whole bunch of tables. I move them around where I want them. And, and I can present them to clients, and they think that I built a presentation when it's really just a numbers doc, and it looks so much nicer than Excel.
Jason, can I tempt you with another option?
Oh, you want a little Lotus 1, 2, 3. You know, Andy, I think at that point I would probably rather just use AppleWorks in emulation on an Apple II emulator.
Oh, it's not even willing to go PFS Calc, huh?
It's funny though.
I mean, that was my first spreadsheet.
I still have the slash built into my fingers, to start entering some. So Lotus 1, 2, 3 was pretty dominant in the world. Wait a minute, we have another sign. I'm going to hold up.
Just saying,
you recommended Lotus 1, 2, 3. I am going to hold up. Give me a single. Multi-plan. No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Actually, in a way, it's a comment on how free stuff that comes with your computer doesn't get the attention it deserves. I think if they charge $150 for numbers, people would sing its praises. But because everybody's got it, it's like, so what?
I'd love to say that I have lots of apps, but the two apps that have made the most money for me in the last 20 years is Keynote and Numbers.
They're great apps.
Those are the ones that have generated the most revenue.
They deserve a lot of, and I think Pages is pretty damn good too, for that matter.
Apple would like to audit you, Alex, and take 30% of that.
Yeah, they would, wouldn't they? Hey, did you go to Boston for the MIT Mystery Hunt? Is there a virtual way?
No. There are lots of teams that are either partially or entirely online. Our team has to go in Boston, right? But it's like you don't have to go. Actually, that has changed, but we do have some people who are in Cambridge and Somerville and could get over there pretty easily.
Well, how could you get the coin if you do it in Discord? If you're not there, how do you get the coin?
We don't want to win. We are a non-competitive team. We don't want to win because we don't want the work of building the next year's mystery hunt. We don't want to win. In fact, during the mystery hunt, the rule is if you're on our team, if you see any coin anywhere, just don't pick it up.
Pretend you didn't
Don't do it.
Yep.
Don't risk it. We're not in this for that.
It's just like Eurovision. There are countries that, oh my God, that's so lame. It's like, yeah, because they know that the country knows that if they win Eurovision, they have to host it next time, and they don't want that trouble or expense.
No, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Jason Snell is going to be busy this week. Make sure you check out sixcolors.com. Those charts will come out on Thursday.
And then other things that fly at your face. All of that is going to happen this week.
Next week will be a very interesting week on this show, I think. Thank you, Jason. So. I appreciate it. His podcast at sixcolors.com/Jason. Anything exciting coming up, or are you all focused on the...
This week's episode of The Incomparable is episode 700 came out last week.
Wow.
Quite a milestone.
Congrats.
Rather than do like a self-focused thing like we do sometimes, I made it about the latest Miyazaki movie, The Boy and the Heron, because we've watched every Miyazaki movie and talked about it on that podcast. And so I felt it was a fitting 700. And for 701, we are doing one of the two subjects that I have put off until there was a readily available high quality version that was publicly out there. And that's James Cameron's best movie. I said it.
Oh, don't say
The Abyss.
Oh, God, no.
Which is now out in 4K.
Because of you, I watched it in 4K.
Episode 701 is all about The Abyss, his best movie and an underrated classic adventure movie. Don't listen to Leo. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
The ending. Now, that's the new ending, right? On the 4K? That's somehow new?
It's not that new. It's the original intended ending, and when he cut a half an hour out, he took it out. And you can choose between the 2010, use them together, use them in peace ending, or you can choose the, wait, that's the end of the movie ending, which was the original ending, which is like, what? That's it?
What? That's all?
And those are your choices. But, it's a 3-hour thrill ride. I love that movie so much. So anyway, the Incomparable, check it out. We couple really banner episodes last week in this.
A Dark Tortoro this week. Next week, we dive into the abyss.
Into the abyss. With our friend Todd Vaziri from ILM, who it's his first time on The Incomparable, and what a special time.
Did The Boy and the Heron get nominated for an Oscar? I think it did, didn't it?
It did. Best Animated Feature. Absolutely did.
Yeah. I know it was up for a Golden Globe as well.
If you're asking yourself, is The Boy and the Heron sort of in the vein of the charming movie, Miyazaki movie like Kiki or Totoro, or is it more of a super weird movie like Spirited Away? That one. That's what it is.
Oh.
It's one of those. It's super weird. It's good, but it's super weird.
And there's
I love it.
A certain amount of bird poop involved. And
if you don't know who Hayao Miyazaki is, he is one of the great directors, not animation directors of all time. So check him out.
But it's all animation. Let's point it out. But you give him credit as a great director.
I think he's one of the great directors in the entire medium, not just animation.
So having literally not seen any of them, although I went to Kiki's house in Tasmania. So I have some, but which one should I start with? Spirited Away, right?
I would actually say, I would say Kiki's Delivery Service because it's nice and cute. And My Neighbor Totoro is also delightful. And those are incredibly accessible. After that, it becomes super weird. But there's a bunch of other, I don't know. There's so many you could just. Spirited Away is good. It's weird, but it's good. I actually kind of like Ponyo now, which is weird because that is a deeply weird movie, but also sweet. And there are many others. He's a genius, that guy. So yeah,
I've been
Castle in the
surrounded.
Sky is good.
Yeah,
there's a movie about a flying pig that's good. Porco Rosso.
When we did
he flies a plane. No, he doesn't fly.
He's a pig.
He's a pig. Who flies a plane.
That would be silly. A flying pig. No. He uses a plane like a normal pig.
The pig is he's a pig because of low self-esteem. Anyway, there are multitudes from Hayao Miyazaki.
Aww.
They're all on Max in the U.S. You could go if you've got Max, you can see all the Miyazakis. They're more accessible than they have ever been for American audiences. Now's the time.
I will find my pictures from Kiki's house in Tasmania and show them to you next week. I didn't know what I was looking at, but everybody was so excited, especially the Japanese photographers. So excited to be there. Andy Anako, GBH in your future?
Yes, Thursday at 12:45 p.m. Eastern. Go to WGBHnews.org to listen to it live or later.
A Vision Pro in your future?
Not unless there's a lottery win in my future.
When you get the flying car, you're going to need the Vision Pro to drive it.
It's a safety thing. You're right. I should definitely get one in anticipation of the flying car.
Thank you, sir. And, of course, we mentioned it, but we'll mention it again. OfficeHours.global is where you find Alex Lindsay. And don't forget the Gray Matter show with Michael Krasny. Got some good guests.
It was such a fun one last week. We had Louis Ferrante on. He's former Gambino family.
Oh, my God.
He's writing. And man, listening to him talk was pretty great.
Wow.
He sounds a lot like Christopher Walken, but he is talking no nonsense, talking about what it's like to be in the mob, and
holy cow.
Like he really
I notice he has the Power Broker on his bookshelf behind him, like everybody on MSNBC. I think it's de rigueur.
But really good guy, and he's reformed. He said that going to prison for 8 years was the best thing that ever happened to him. He learned how to write. He
changed
learned
his life.
that he was changed his life. But but it's really if you have any interest in the mafia, it's a pretty great conversation in like getting an inside view of what it's like, which he says is not glamorous. He says it's a bunch of people doing business, killing each other. He's like there's nothing glamorous about it. But he talks about the process. So I think it's really to really get a view of it from the inside is something that's really interesting. So
absolutely. And good on him for getting out. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Except feet first.
I guess he didn't take the oath, so he didn't take the oath. And then he went to prison before he didn't take the oath. And when he got out of prison, he didn't want to take the oath.
But he did. But the reason he went to prison is because he didn't squeal. So he gets some respect for that.
And he'll talk about that a lot. Like he's like, I never ratted anybody out. I think he said it. I think that was.
I never ratted. But I would like to tell you who killed JFK. Apparently, that is also
he's writing a whole book about that.
Yeah.
He's writing a whole book about it. Yeah. He gave us a little breakdown.
I think we're starting to understand now exactly that was not as advertised.
I don't think anybody thinks it was a lone gunman at this point.
Oh, don't get me started on that, please.
Are you still think it was just Oswald all by himself?
I think that in order to I'll try to condense this into 30 seconds or a minute.
Please, because this could go on.
You start off, I'm saying...
Jason wants to go.
All I'll say is that you start off with what happened at Dealey Plaza at the during the shooting, okay? And then you ask yourself, what is not explained by these events, okay? And that's the lens through which you look at every single conspiracy theory about, oh, there are lone gunmen like on the grassy knoll, or no, there was never anybody here or there. It's like, okay, but does that you only look for, okay, but what if there was a second person there? Or
in other words, Occam's razor. What's the simplest explanation of what happened?
Not just the simplest explanation, but what fits the facts. I'm going to cut myself off here, but every single time I hear any kind of conspiracy, I think about, yes, but if that had happened, there would have been evidence here, and there is no evidence
Alex,
here.
We're going to have to get him to listen to the interview and see if he agrees.
Fine. Yeah.
Hey, thank you all. You're great. You're wonderful. Thank you for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. We stream it live on YouTube, youtube.com/twit. Right when the show begins, we're about to turn it off because the show's about to end. It's like that. Of course, if you're in the club, it's a kind of a continuous, ongoing stream. So join the club, twit.tv/clubtwit. Last day, I think, yes, to take the survey. It ends at the end of the month. So if you haven't yet taken the survey, I want to get a good representative group from every show so that every show's audience is well represented. Twit.tv/survey24. It's quick, it's fast, it's painless, and it really helps us. So we appreciate that. And thank you for joining us. Now I have to say, I'm sorry, but you've got to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of AdAster Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.